After an unforgettable night with the CEO, he had no idea about her biggest secret. Days later, a revelation changes everything between them. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Emma Harris gazed at the polished mahogany conference table, her heart pounding as she wrapped up her presentation. The warm light from the ceiling fixtures cast a soft glow on the faces of the directors and tech specialists who had gathered at Carter Tech's corporate suite in downtown Chicago. It was already late in the evening, but no one seemed to mind. The promise of a revolutionary green technology had that effect on people, holding their attention as if the world outside had ceased to exist. She inhaled slowly, her nerves still aflutter. At 35, Emma had spent the last decade dedicating herself to environmental engineering and building a reputation that preceded her. Raised in a small town in Illinois, she'd learned early on the value of resourcefulness. Through grit and sacrifice, she had earned her place at Green Growth Innovations, a rising company in the sustainability sector. Standing there, wearing her neatly pressed grey blazer, her brown hair pinned back and her dark-framed glasses perched on her nose, she looked every bit the calm professional, yet inside she couldn't shake the fluttering sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. "Excellent work, Ms. Harris," said Marcus Carter, the CEO of Carter Tech. He was 38, tall, with dark hair graying subtly at the temples, and carried himself with a self-assured grace that came from years of corporate negotiations. His intense gaze locked on Emma, and for a moment she felt her pulse quicken. The meeting room erupted in applause, and she tried to steady her breathing. "Thank you," she replied, offering a measured smile. "I appreciate the opportunity to share our proposal. I truly believe this technology can bring significant environmental benefits, especially in urban areas struggling with pollution." As the executives began filing out, exchanging cards and pleasantries, Emma gathered her materials. Before she could slip away, Marcus stepped toward her with a knowing glint in his eyes. "I was thinking we should continue this conversation," he said softly, his tone far more personal than professional. "If your schedule is free, would you like to grab a drink upstairs?" She hesitated, surprised. Her usual protocol was simple: never mix business with pleasure. She prided herself on being measured and cautious, always in control. But the warmth in Marcus's expression and the hint of curiosity in his voice tugged at her. All around them, the hustle of late-night Chicago, the hum of traffic and neon reflections, seemed to fade. She could almost feel the entire city holding its breath, waiting for her reply. Emma tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. Sure, that sounds nice," she said, trying to keep her tone even. A few minutes later, she found herself stepping into the hotel's rooftop lounge, which boasted floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The gentle hush of city lights and the distant sound of a saxophone from the lobby bar below created an ambiance that felt more intimate than a corporate setting should allow. She settled onto a plush couch, and Marcus joined her, offering a short nod to the bartender. "You're quite passionate about your project," he remarked, leaning forward. His crisp navy suit gave off a subtle hint of cologne, a refined scent that made Emma's cheeks feel warm. "I am," she admitted. "Sustainability isn't just a buzzword to me. It's about making real changes that people can see, greener cities, healthier populations. There's so much we can do if we push the boundaries of technology in the right way." Marcus studied her face. "That's precisely what grabbed my attention. Well, that and your presence." He chuckled softly, then cleared his throat, as if catching himself. "I mean, it's clear you care deeply about this work." Emma's eyes flicked to the city skyline. I've always believed our professional achievements don't have to come at the cost of our personal values, she said. But I also know that the corporate world is full of compromises. He leaned back, letting her words settle. And do you ever regret how many compromises you've had to make along the way? A moment of silence stretched between them. She thought of late nights spent double-checking data, missed family gatherings, and the uneasy feeling that she'd walled off part of herself to succeed in this competitive field. Regret, no, she replied quietly. But sometimes I wonder if I've missed out on some of life's simpler joys. Her gaze drifted toward the glimmering windows of the city below. The lounge lights cast a gentle reflection on the glass, creating an almost surreal portrait. Her and Marcus side by side, their silhouettes faint against the glow. They sipped their drinks, sharing stories of their early careers. He spoke of the sleepless nights he'd spent trying to secure venture capital, while she recalled how her first proposal on eco-friendly polymers had been dismissed. Gradually, their laughter became easier, the conversation more relaxed. The tension from the conference room melted away, and with it, Emma felt a cautious spark of possibility. Something about Marcus intrigued her in a way she couldn't ignore. She saw a fierceness in his ambition that matched her own, yet there was also genuine admiration in his voice whenever he described how technology could serve a greater social purpose. They stayed until the lounge began to close. When they parted ways in the elevator lobby, Emma noticed her palms were clammy, her heart still pounding. He said goodnight with a small bow of his head, as though giving her space to process what had just transpired. As she stepped into a taxi, Emma stared out at the radiant expanse of Chicago and wondered if she'd just taken a step onto a path she never intended to tread. She reminded herself of her vow: never mix pleasure with business. Yet the memory of Marcus's warm smile and the gentle timbre of his voice lingered in her mind, echoing like a whisper that promised something far more than just a business partnership. Emma woke the next morning to the soft chime of her phone's alarm. Sunlight trickled through the blinds of her small but cozy apartment in Lincoln Park. She sat on the edge of her bed, her thoughts still swirling with memories from the rooftop lounge. Even in the light of day, the recollection of Marcus's voice and the way he looked at her made her heart flutter. Her phone buzzed. She half expected it to be a message from her boss or a colleague, but to her surprise, it was from Marcus himself. He thanked her for the previous night's conversation, suggesting they meet again soon to discuss more about her project. She stared at the text, trying to decide if the sudden warmth in her chest was excitement or apprehension. She sighed, pulling her hair into a neat ponytail before dressing for work. Stepping into the living room, she glanced at the framed photos on her bookshelf. One was from her college graduation. Her father's proud smile beamed back at her, a reminder of how much he believed in her tenacity. Another photo showed Emma with her best friend Michelle during a hiking trip in the Rocky Mountains. Michelle's eyes sparkled with laughter, and Emma felt a rush of gratitude for having someone so supportive in her life. By the time she arrived at the Green Growth Innovations building, the city was fully awake. Horns blared, and pedestrians hurried down the sidewalks. Inside, the hum of computers and the low murmur of conference calls provided a familiar comfort. She made her way to her small corner office, mentally listing the tasks ahead: refine final data for the partnership pitch, confirm specs with the design team, and prepare for a board meeting in the afternoon. Minutes later, her friend Michelle breezed in, a to-go latte in each hand. "Morning," Michelle said, setting one cup on Emma's desk. She was in her early 40s, with curly dark hair and a welcoming smile. "You look like someone who needs a dose of caffeine. Stat." "Thanks," Emma said, taking a grateful sip. "I had a late night." Michelle raised an eyebrow. "Oh, And was this late night purely work-related? Emma hesitated, then decided there was no point hiding it. I ended up chatting with Marcus Carter after my presentation. We went to the rooftop lounge at his hotel. Michelle's eyes went wide. Wait, the Marcus Carter, CEO of Carter Tech? Yes. And before you say anything, it was just a friendly conversation about the project. Sure, Michelle teased with a playful smirk. Is this the same Emma Harris who once said mixing pleasure and business is the worst idea ever? Emma let out a resigned sigh. That's exactly what's bothering me. It breaks all my rules, and yet I accepted his invitation. Now he's texting me about meeting again. Part of me wants to say no and keep things professional. But the other part, Michelle pressed, leaning forward. Emma shrugged. The other part enjoyed talking to him. He seemed genuine about sustainable tech, like he really cares. He's obviously a brilliant businessman, but there's something else there. Michelle tapped her mug thoughtfully. My advice? Let things unfold. You don't have to label it right away. Just be honest with yourself about what you want. Emma tried to refocus on her tasks, but her mind drifted to the text message from Marcus. During a dull data review meeting, she found herself rereading his words. Every time she glanced at them, she felt a rush of anticipation that both thrilled and unsettled her. As lunchtime approached, she decided to text him back, suggesting they meet at a local cafe, a less extravagant setting than the hotel bar. She hit send and felt her nerves spark. Within minutes, his reply arrived. Sounds perfect. Looking forward to it. That afternoon, Emma rushed through her responsibilities, each one feeling more mundane than usual. When the clock finally hit 5, she packed her laptop bag and headed out. The cafe was only a short ride away, its bright sign visible from across the street. She took a deep breath as she walked inside, scanning the room until her eyes landed on him. Marcus was seated by a window, wearing a charcoal blazer that highlighted his sharp features. He caught sight of her and stood, greeting her with a soft nod and a warm smile. Good to see you, Emma, he said, pulling out a chair for her. The gesture was courteous, a little old-fashioned, and made her heart flutter. She sat down, feeling the familiar tension of being near him. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped them, and the chatter of other patrons seemed to fade into the background. Emma couldn't help but think about how this simple meeting was already weaving itself into her routine in ways she never anticipated. She tried not to dwell too much on the sense of displacement it caused. After all, she had just taken another step toward a situation that was equally exciting and unsettling. Later that night, Emma curled up on her modest love seat, laptop balanced on her knees. The final notes from the cafe meeting replayed in her mind. Marcus talking about potential investor concerns, the future of carbon capture devices, and even a light-hearted discussion about local sports. Between those corporate topics, there had been quick, lingering gazes and smiles that felt far too personal. She kept reminding herself that she barely knew him beyond his polished business persona and philanthropic statements. Yet something tugged at her, urging her to linger on every recollection. In the privacy of her apartment, she couldn't escape the thought that, for the first time in ages, she was genuinely intrigued by someone. She glanced at her reflection in the dark screen of the TV across the room, feeling a wave of uncertainty. What if this was just a fleeting distraction? Her phone rang, its loud jingle startling her from her thoughts. She grabbed it and saw her father's name pop up on the caller ID. Taking a breath, she answered, "Hi, Dad." "Emmy, how are you doing?" His voice was firm yet caring. He'd always been her biggest supporter and her toughest critic. "I heard from one of your cousins that you're working on a major deal again." She set the laptop aside. "I am. It's with Carter Tech, a huge partner. This could be the biggest project my company's ever handled, and it's my design." "That's wonderful," he said, though his tone hinted at concern. "You've been chasing these breakthroughs for so long. Don't forget to take care of yourself, though. Sometimes you push too hard." Emma stiffened slightly, recalling the times he'd criticized her for missing family gatherings or birthdays because of her work. "I know, Dad. I'm trying to find balance." She decided not to mention her growing connection with Marcus. The last thing she needed was a lecture. After a few more minutes of small talk, she ended the call, feeling the familiar weight of paternal expectations. The hush of her living room felt overwhelming now. Instead of turning on the TV, she grabbed her phone and scrolled through her messages. A single unread text from Michelle flashed on the screen. "So, how was the cafe date?" She smiled despite herself. "It was fine," she typed back. "Just talking business, mostly." But even as she wrote the words, she felt a twist of guilt. There was more to it than business, and pretending otherwise made her uneasy. Her thoughts drifted to a painful memory from years ago. She'd been in a serious relationship with an engineer named Kyle, also in the green tech sector. They'd worked on a startup together until he'd sabotaged her efforts to advance his own career. The betrayal had been devastating, leaving her wary of letting anyone from work get too close. She'd built walls to protect herself. Now, with Marcus, she sensed an unexpected desire to tear down a part of those walls. But the risk felt daunting. Feeling restless, she paced around her apartment. The moonlight shining through the window reminded her of the rooftop lounge from the other night. Everything had seemed so heightened then, as if they were characters in a movie scene. In daylight, real life had returned with all its complications, leaving her questioning every step. Could she truly trust a high-profile CEO who lived in a realm of power deals and boardroom politics? She paused by a small bookshelf that held her professional accolades, certificates, a framed newspaper clipping hailing her as a rising star in sustainable engineering, and an award for innovation. These items symbolized years of dedication and solitary nights poring over data. They also represented the very walls that kept her safe from heartbreak, but equally distanced her from exploring deeper personal connections. She realized she couldn't rush into anything. Her rule of never mixing business and pleasure was there for a reason, to safeguard the professional reputation she had fought so hard to establish. Letting Marcus in could jeopardize not only her career, but also her emotional well-being. Yet the more she tried to resist, the stronger the pull toward him felt. She shut her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. Perhaps she needed to listen more closely to her instincts, or maybe she had to remain vigilant. It was a delicate balance, to remain open to the possibilities of happiness without letting her guard down too far. Still, the question wouldn't leave her alone. How long could she keep her desire locked away while working so closely with Marcus? When Emma arrived at Greengrowth the next morning, she immediately sensed the buzz in the air. The partnership talks with Carter Tech had put a fresh spark in everyone's step. The front desk receptionist greeted her with a wide smile, and colleagues offered congratulations on her recent presentation success. Word had spread that Marcus Carter himself was impressed by her team's achievements. She walked to her office, still battling the swirl of emotions. "Focus on the project," she told herself, stepping through the door. The neat rows of potted plants lining the windowsills reminded her why she'd chosen this path in the first place, to innovate and protect the planet. Any personal entanglements needed to come second. Her phone chimed. Seeing Marcus's name caused her heart rate to speed up. His message read, "In your building, would love a quick word." Before she could think of a reply, there was a knock on the open door. She turned to find Marcus standing there, looking at her with a mixture of professional composure and friendly warmth. "Morning, Emma," he said. "I was hoping we could review a few technical points regarding the proposal." Do you have a moment? She cleared her throat, gesturing to a chair. Yes, of course. Please come in. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The air suddenly felt charged, a contrast to the usual dryness of office routine. She motioned to her desk, where several folders were stacked. I have the updated designs here. We've integrated new materials that could improve efficiency by 10%. Marcus nodded, leaning over the desk. I've read through them. Impressive work as always, but to secure the partnership, the board wants more clarity on the time frame. Our investors aren't exactly patient. Emma explained her projected schedule, highlighting milestones. He listened, arms folded, occasionally asking pointed questions. It all felt very businesslike, until their eyes met, and a quiet tension slid between them. Thank you, he said, his voice gentler than before. Also, Emma, there's a dinner happening tonight, strictly business, but a bit more relaxed. Some of the Carter Tech leadership is eager to know the person behind the ideas. A mixture of pride and caution flickered in her eyes. I appreciate the opportunity. That said, I hope we can keep the focus on the project. He caught her drift. I respect that. I'll have my assistant send you the details. With that, he left. Emma remained rooted in her chair, the echo of his presence lingering. She realized her carefully kept boundary was eroding piece by piece, especially each time he showed up unannounced. The looming dinner invitation felt like yet another challenge: maintain professionalism or risk stepping further into emotional quicksand. That evening, she found herself walking into one of Chicago's upscale restaurants. The warm, ambient lighting and the low murmur of conversations created an intimate atmosphere, despite the presence of multiple Carter Tech execs at a long table. Marcus stood at the far end, engaged in conversation with a board member, but his gaze flicked toward Emma the moment she arrived. Emma, he said, introducing her to a few of his colleagues. They exchanged pleasantries, talking about the sustainable tech sector, the company's goals, and the current political climate affecting green initiatives. Amid the corporate talk, Emma couldn't help noticing how Marcus occasionally glanced her way, as if checking to see if she was comfortable. She answered questions with composure, making sure to emphasize her team's achievements rather than focusing on herself. Dinner was served, delicate plates of roasted vegetables and responsibly sourced fish. As the conversation flowed, one of the older executives leaned in. We've heard a lot about your commitment to the environment, Ms. Harris. Is it true you once shut down an entire production line because of an ecological concern? Emma nodded. Yes, a few years ago, we discovered a design flaw that could have harmed local waterways if mass-produced. It wasn't an easy decision, but the cost of potential damage was too high. Fortunately, we found a solution that was both profitable and sustainable. Marcus's expression reflected admiration. That's the kind of drive Carter Tech values. I'm sure we'll accomplish great things together. As the group laughed and shared more stories, Emma noticed how smoothly Marcus balanced his roles. He was charismatic, yet respectful, making sure everyone felt included. By the time dessert arrived, tiny servings of a decadent chocolate mousse, she found herself unexpectedly at ease. When the dinner concluded, she excused herself to the lobby to avoid an awkward extended farewell. But Marcus caught up with her by the coat check. You handled yourself well in there, he said, his tone carrying genuine praise. I'm impressed. Emma felt her guard wavering again. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. His eyes softened. I meant what I said earlier. I do admire your approach. It's rare to find someone who combines passion with practicality the way you do. A wave of conflicting emotions tightened her chest. It was the sort of moment she usually dodged, but the sincerity in his voice held her in place. Her mind raced with reasons to remain distant, to not let his words get under her skin. But the gentle sincerity in his gaze made a counter-argument difficult. They stood there for a moment, the lull in conversation underscoring the unspoken tension between them. Emma finally managed to nod politely, excusing herself. She stepped out into the crisp night air, telling herself she was only preserving her professional integrity. Yet she couldn't shake the sense that her heart was steering her in a direction that defied all reason. Emma spent most of the next day immersed in data analysis, trying to distract herself from a swirl of conflicting emotions. She needed to finalize a critical report that Carter-Tech's board had requested. Yet every so often, her mind drifted back to the dinner, recalling how Marcus's words had resonated more deeply than she'd ever intended to allow. Late in the afternoon, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw a text from Marcus. "Quick coffee break. We need to finalize one last item for the board." Despite her reluctance to mix personal and professional any further, she agreed. After all, it was part of her job to ensure the partnership ran smoothly. They met at a chic coffee shop near the Greengrowth building. The moment she stepped inside, she spotted him. He smiled warmly, making her heartbeat accelerate in a way that both thrilled and unnerved her. They talked for a few minutes about the timeline for finalizing the project specs, confirming dates for board presentations and investor meetings. Emma diligently noted everything down. But once the official agenda ended, a quiet pause settled between them. "You seem a bit distant today," Marcus observed, stirring his coffee. His gaze was calm but curious. She sighed, keeping her eyes on the to-go cup in front of her. "I'm just thinking about how complicated things can get if we're not careful." He leaned forward slightly. "Emma, I understand your concerns. This partnership is crucial for both of us, and it needs to be handled delicately. But I also believe we shouldn't ignore what's happening here." Her brow furrowed. "I'm not ignoring it. I'm just being cautious. My career means a lot to me. I can't afford any scandal, and neither can your company." Marcus nodded. "I respect that. Trust me, I've faced enough corporate pitfalls to understand the stakes. But at the same time, there's an authenticity to what we share. I don't want to lose that." His openness caught her off guard. It felt as though he was peeling back layers she hadn't realized he had. The steady hum of the espresso machine and the chatter of other patrons faded into the background. She realized that, despite her rule to keep personal life separate, the boundary had become increasingly blurred. She decided to be honest. "Marcus, you're right. There is something here, but it scares me. I've seen how badly things can go when relationships overlap with work. I just need to be sure I'm not risking everything for a fleeting moment." His eyes flickered with understanding. "I'm not asking you to leap without thinking. Maybe all we need right now is to see where it goes, carefully." He paused for a moment, then lowered his voice. "I'd like to invite you to dinner tonight. A real dinner, away from boardrooms and executive suits. No talk of contracts or budgets, just you and me. I'll respect whatever boundaries you set." Emma felt a surge of conflicting excitement. Part of her wanted to decline, to protect herself. Another part, a side she'd tried to bury beneath professional ambition, yearned to say yes. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. "All right, but let's keep it simple and discreet." That evening, they met at a quiet, unassuming restaurant in a neighborhood known more for its local charm than big-name establishments. She appreciated that he chose a low-profile spot, perhaps to minimize rumors or the chance of running into colleagues. They took a corner table near a window that overlooked a small park. The scene felt worlds away from the polished hustle of downtown. Their conversation flowed more naturally now, sprinkled with personal stories. Marcus revealed he'd grown up on the East Coast, the son of a single mother who pushed him to excel. He'd taken the helm at Carter Tech only after years of building his credibility, sometimes against the odds. Emma shared her own story of forging ahead in a male-dominated field, the challenges of proving her ideas had real scientific merit, and how she often sacrificed her social life to keep her research at the cutting edge. As the meal progressed, she found herself unwinding in a way that rarely happened. The tension in her shoulders eased, and the small lines of stress around her eyes softened. They laughed about silly mishaps, like the time her team accidentally triggered the sprinkler system in the lab, or when Marcus nearly missed a crucial flight because he was too engrossed in a book on renewable energy. When the check arrived, he insisted on covering it, to which she reluctantly agreed. Stepping outside, they lingered near the restaurant's doorway, the evening air carrying the scent of pine from the park across the street. Marcus placed a gentle hand on her arm. She could have pulled away, but she didn't. They shared a moment of mutual understanding, both aware that their dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Emma realized that she was standing on the edge of something that could change her life in ways she couldn't predict. She recalled her father's concern about balance, her own vow not to mix business and pleasure, and the possibility that this partnership might thrive or collapse based on the decisions they made. She drew in a breath, letting the quiet of the night settle around them. While part of her mind still cautioned restraint, the hint of warmth in Marcus's touch reminded her that sometimes the biggest leaps begin with the smallest steps. The day after her quiet dinner with Marcus, Emma sat in Greengrowth's glass-walled meeting room, reviewing a stack of technical documents. It was well past lunch, and the faint hum of computers and printers in the background had turned into a steady chorus of office life. Emma struggled to focus. Her thoughts drifted to the subtle tension she and Marcus had acknowledged. No matter how she turned it over in her mind, she couldn't decide if it was a danger to her career or a chance she'd long avoided. Just as she closed one file and reached for another, Harriet Dawson walked in. Harriet was in her early 50s, with short, salt-and-pepper hair and a calm demeanor that commanded respect. Though she didn't hold Emma's direct position in the hierarchy, Harriet was a respected director at Greengrowth, especially for her track record in sustainable development. "May I join you, Emma?" Harriet asked softly, tapping her knuckles on the open door. Emma nodded and gestured for her to have a seat. "Of course." Harriet shut the door behind her, then sat down opposite Emma. "I heard you and Marcus Carter are making good progress on the project," she said, her voice measured. "I also heard he's been spending quite a bit of time here." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "He's very hands-on," she offered, trying to sound casual. Harriet studied her face for a moment. "You're good at what you do, Emma. You've carved out a place for yourself that few can claim, especially in this male-dominated field." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I don't want to pry into your personal life, but I've been around long enough to recognize certain dynamics." Emma's pulse quickened. "Marcus is a major partner. Our meetings are purely business," Harriet finished for her. "Yes, I'm aware, but I also see a spark in your eyes when you mention him. I recognize it because I once had that spark for someone I worked with. We were in a high-stakes project, too." She leaned back, exhaling. "I let that relationship slip away because I was too afraid of jeopardizing my career." The quiet sincerity in Harriet's tone made Emma pause. She respected Harriet's opinions more than most. "I appreciate your honesty," Emma said softly. "I just don't know if it's worth the risk." "That's a question only you can answer, but there's something else. We're about to enter uncharted territory with this Carter Tech deal. The board is pushing for a massive rollout, and we both know not everyone in the corporate world is thrilled about cutting-edge green technology. Rivals will be looking for weak points, professionally or personally. If the rumor mill starts churning about you and Marcus, it could be weaponized against you both. Emma's stomach twisted. She'd considered that possibility, but hadn't quite allowed herself to dwell on it. So, you think I should step back? Harriet shook her head. I'm not telling you what to do, Emma. I just think you should be prepared for the challenges ahead. Handle your emotions and your image with intention, because once you cross a certain line, there's no going back. Emma nodded, a weight settling on her chest. Harriet's warning felt more like a mentor's caring guidance than a reprimand. Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. Harriet stood, smoothing her dark green blazer. Before I go, I want you to know, no matter what happens, I see a tremendous future for you. Just make sure you're making choices that align with your values. All the success in the world won't matter if you lose yourself in the process. Once Harriet left, Emma stared at her reflection in the meeting room's glass walls. She felt both comforted and unsettled. Harriet had effectively handed her a roadmap of caution and possibility. It reminded Emma that although her connection with Marcus might be unfolding in small, careful steps, it was leading her somewhere she couldn't easily predict. Later that evening, Emma found herself dialing her friend Michelle's number. After a few rings, Michelle answered, sounding breathless. I'm in the middle of dinner with my niece, but tell me everything. Emma recapped her conversation with Harriet, including the cautionary tales and the hint of regret that Harriet had expressed about her own past. Michelle listened without interruption, then chimed in. She's got a point. You're in a delicate position, Em. People are watching, especially those looking for a reason to undermine your credibility. If the partnership goes well, a lot of folks stand to profit, but if it fails, they'll be quick to blame you. Emma rubbed her temple. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. The more time I spend with Marcus, the more these lines blur. Michelle sighed sympathetically. I'm not saying you should deny something that feels genuine, but Harriet's right. Be intentional. If you choose to pursue a personal connection, make sure you're aware of the stakes. And never forget the reason you started this project in the first place, protecting our planet and innovating with integrity. Emma thanked her friend and ended the call. She scrolled through her contacts and paused at Marcus's name. Her finger hovered over the screen, but she locked it instead. Tonight, at least, she would take Harriet's and Michelle's words to heart, letting herself reflect on how to traverse this uncertain path. 2 days later, Emma hurried into the bustling lobby of O'Hare International Airport. She carried a compact suitcase, her laptop bag slung over one shoulder. Green Growth and Carter Tech were co-sponsoring a big presentation at an environmental tech conference in Boston, and Emma was the designated speaker for her team. The synergy between the two companies was on full display. Their combined booth at the conference was rumored to be the star attraction. She checked in, then made her way through security with practiced efficiency. As she approached the gate, she spotted Marcus, surrounded by a small group of Carter Tech staff. Despite his polished business attire, he looked relaxed. He gave her a quick wave and motioned her over. "Emma, glad you made it," he said, lowering his voice so it was just loud enough for her to hear. "Have you got everything prepared for your talk?" She nodded, adjusting the strap on her laptop bag. "I've been rehearsing my slides all week. The data's solid, and the board gave final approval on the design revisions." Her eyes skimmed the group behind him. Familiar faces from Carter Tech's research and development department, some of whom she recognized from prior meetings. Marcus introduced her to a few of them, including Linda, a bright-eyed data analyst, and Jamal, who was the lead on a parallel project focusing on solar-powered water filtration. Once the pleasantries were out of the way, Emma and Marcus drifted slightly apart from the group. "Looking forward to seeing how the conference crowd reacts," Marcus said, his gaze lingering on her. Boston's a different stage, more media presence. There'll be reporters, investors, even a few government reps. Emma swallowed. Yeah, I'm aware. I'll stick to the facts, present the potential environmental impact, and leave the hype to the marketing people. Marcus gave a small grin. I have no doubt you'll handle it well. If you need anything, let me know. They boarded the plane soon after. Emma found her seat, an aisle spot next to Harriet, who had joined as well. She was delighted to see a friendly face. Harriet offered a supportive smile while stowing her carry-on. I almost forgot the rush of traveling for big events, Harriet murmured, settling into her seat. Everything feels so fast-paced, doesn't it? Emma agreed, securing her seatbelt. She noticed Marcus sitting a few rows ahead, occasionally twisting to glance back at them. Harriet leaned in slightly. I see that you two are still navigating your dynamic, she said, her tone low. Emma exhaled softly, not wanting to spark more conversation about it. We're just trying to make the partnership run smoothly, she replied, keeping her voice neutral. A few hours later, the plane began its descent into Boston. From the window, Emma could see the Charles River snaking through the city and the iconic skyline looming in the evening light. She felt a surge of anticipation. This was where her project would step into a larger spotlight. They disembarked, and a company-arranged shuttle ferried them to their hotel near the convention center. The city's historic charm blended with modern high-rises, a juxtaposition that always gave Emma a thrill. She gazed out the window at the cobblestone sidewalks and passing crowds, reminded of how each new location broadened her perspective. Once at the hotel, everyone went through the usual flurry of check-ins. By the time Emma got to her room, she was exhausted yet keyed up. She tossed her suitcase on the bed and reviewed her schedule. A late dinner with a small circle of sponsors that night, an early rehearsal at the convention center in the morning, followed by back-to-back panels and breakout sessions. She freshened up and headed down to the hotel's lounge. The place was abuzz with conference attendees mingling over drinks. She spotted Harriet chatting with another sustainability director, but it was Marcus who caught her eye. He stood near the bar, conversing with a tall, broad-shouldered man Emma recognized as Victor Milhouse, a rival director from a competing tech firm. Marcus noticed her approach and motioned her over. Emma, you know Victor Milhouse, right? He's been following similar lines of research in water purification. Victor extended a hand. We've exchanged a few emails, Ms. Harris. Good to see you in person. Emma smiled politely, though something about Victor's intense gaze put her on guard. Likewise, she said. I hear your project is generating quite the buzz, Victor commented, taking a sip from his tumbler. Eager to see if it lives up to the hype. His tone was just short of condescending. Emma maintained her composure. We're confident in our data, and we look forward to sharing it with everyone. Marcus intervened smoothly, shifting the conversation to a safer topic, keynote speakers and potential policy changes. Still, Emma couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. Victor's demeanor suggested skepticism, if not outright hostility. She reminded herself that not everyone in the corporate world was eager to celebrate an innovative rival's triumph. Eventually, Harriet joined them, steering Emma away under the pretext of introducing her to other sponsors. As they moved across the lounge, Harriet leaned in. Be careful around him, she warned. Victor's been known to gather accidental intelligence at these events, possibly for sabotage. Don't let your guard down. Emma nodded, her mind stirring with questions about what exactly Victor might do if he felt threatened by her project's success. As she mingled among the small groups of attendees, she realized this trip was more than just a chance to showcase technology. It was a step away from her familiar environment into a realm of higher stakes and more formidable adversaries. The morning sun streamed through Emma's hotel curtains as she hastily dressed for the conference's first day. She tugged at the collar of her blouse, then meticulously scanned her laptop for any last-minute updates to her presentation slides. Her nerves felt sharper than usual, possibly due to the looming presence of Victor Millhouse and the corporate heavies who would be dissecting every statistic she presented. When she arrived at the convention center, the scale of the event hit her. Towering banners announced the Green Tech Innovation Summit, and clusters of attendees hovered by registration tables, scanning their badges and collecting schedules. The hum of conversation and the distant whir of demonstration booths blended into a cacophony that left her both energized and tense. She located Carter Tech's expansive booth, which was partially shared with Green Growth. Sophisticated displays showcased prototypes, interactive screens, and background videos of carbon reduction success stories. Her own device, a cutting-edge emissions filtration unit, was placed front and center under spotlighting. Marcus was already there, chatting with potential investors. His polished demeanor and easy smile fit perfectly into the conference's grand setting. He spotted Emma, waved her over, and introduced her to a representative from a Federal Energy Commission. Emma handled the conversation gracefully, describing how her filtration system could drastically improve air quality in urban centers. The official asked a flurry of questions, seeming genuinely impressed. Once the official stepped away, Marcus quietly said, "You're off to a strong start. Our booth is already attracting more foot traffic than we anticipated." Emma glanced around. There was a slight crowd forming at their display, many glancing curiously at the device. "Good," she replied, her confidence rising. "We're ready for a broader audience." As she gave a brief demonstration to a small group of journalists, a familiar shape appeared in her peripheral vision. Victor Millhouse. He hung back, arms crossed, as if waiting for her to finish. She continued walking the journalists through the filtration process, highlighting new materials that made the unit both cost-effective and eco-friendly. The cameras flashed, and one reporter took notes while Emma spoke with practiced poise. When they departed, Victor stepped forward with a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Impressive display," he commented, walking around the filtration unit. "My own firm has been working on something similar, though not quite as ornate." Emma forced a polite smile. "It's not just about aesthetics. Our team's goal is to present the technical data in an accessible format. People are more likely to invest if they can visualize the impact." Victor nodded slowly. "No doubt, but presentations can sometimes gloss over structural flaws. I assume you've thoroughly tested the efficiency rates under real-world conditions." Emma met his gaze. "We've conducted multiple field trials in different climates. The unit's performance has been consistent with our projections." He tapped the metal casing lightly, his eyes narrowing. "Interesting." Then he stepped away, leaving a whiff of tension in his wake. Marcus appeared by her side. "He seems determined to poke holes in your work. Don't let it get to you." Emma took a steadying breath. "I won't. If anything, it motivates me to be even more prepared." Later, she hurried to a nearby conference hall where she was scheduled to deliver her keynote presentation. A large crowd filled the seats. Harriet gave her a supportive nod from the front row. Michelle, who had flown in late the night before, waved encouragingly. Emma's heart fluttered. This was her moment to reveal to the world a technology she believed could truly change lives. She ascended the stage, stepping behind a sleek podium. Her first slide flashed on a massive screen, showing city skylines submerged in haze. With measured calm, she began explaining the urgent need for better emissions control in heavily populated urban environments. She spoke of cost benefits, environmental targets, and the moral responsibility businesses held in protecting the planet for future generations. As she clicked through slides of data and real-world test results, She felt an empowering surge. The occasional flash of cameras didn't faze her. The whispered discussions in the audience only spurred her on. She ended with a vision, a global network of these filtration units drastically reducing pollution in major cities. The hall erupted in applause, and Emma allowed herself a quiet smile. When she exited the stage, Harriet reached her first. "That was absolutely brilliant. You had the entire room at the edge of their seats." Marcus approached next, beaming with pride. "You did us all proud, Emma." She glanced around, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. No matter how intimidating the environment or how challenging the skeptics, she knew this was where she belonged, on the front line of innovation, sharing a dream that extended beyond quarterly profits. It was a new world, bigger and more intense than anything she'd experienced, but she felt ready to navigate it. By the second day of the conference, Emma had fallen into a steady rhythm. She arrived early to the Carter Tech Green Growth booth, reviewed updates with the teams, and participated in panel discussions with leading industry experts. The atmosphere buzzed with ideas about green energy, water conservation, and climate policy. Each passing moment reminded her that she was now immersed in a broader, more complex arena than ever before. During a morning break, she wandered through aisles of other exhibits, drawn by curiosity. Huge displays touted breakthroughs in solar panel efficiency, battery storage solutions, and digital platforms to track carbon footprints. She paused at a booth run by a small startup from Seattle, studying their innovative approach to plastic recycling. Ideas always seemed to spark more ideas, and she found herself making mental notes about potential collaborations down the line. Halfway through her impromptu tour, she noticed Marcus heading her way. He'd shrugged off his suit jacket, appearing more casual yet still commanding attention as he cut through the crowd. "I've been looking everywhere for you," he said, catching up. "Mind if we talk for a moment?" "Of course." She gestured toward a quieter corner of the hall, away from the main foot traffic. Marcus glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. "I wanted to run something by you. I just had a quick meeting with some government representatives who showed serious interest in scaling your filtration technology nationally, but they're also testing out a rival system, Victor's system." Emma's stomach did a small flip. "So, the competition just got real." He nodded. "Very real. However, they hinted that if we can provide more robust data, particularly on long-term durability, they might lean toward us." She let out a slow breath. "I have more data sets back at Green Growth, plus the field studies from last fall. We just need time to compile and present it in a compelling way." Marcus's expression softened. "I knew you'd have a plan. Let's figure out who to bring into the conversation. Maybe Harriet can help with the policy side, and we can loop in Dr. Samuel Williams from R&D to finalize the technical aspects." Emma nodded, feeling renewed determination. Every challenge brought fresh urgency, but she thrived under pressure. She also felt an inexplicable comfort in the way Marcus said "we," as though they were truly in this together, not just in a business sense. Later, she reconvened with Harriet and Michelle in a small conference room near the main exhibit floor. They pored over charts and technical reports, discussing how to transform raw numbers into persuasive evidence for government stakeholders. Emma led the charge, pointing to weaknesses in earlier data sets and proposing ways to strengthen them. Michelle, scanning a laptop, said, "I can update all of these slides tonight, then we can present them tomorrow to that government delegation." "Harriet, can you handle scheduling a quick meeting?" Harriet typed on her phone. "On it. This might be short notice, but I'll see if they can spare some time after the afternoon panels." Emma surveyed the table strewn with documents, feeling a sense of camaraderie. Yet, beneath her focused demeanor, a ripple of anxiety persisted. Victor's presence loomed. She couldn't forget how casually he'd tried to undermine her credibility. As if on cue, Harriet's gaze locked with hers. We should assume that Milhouse might try to intercept this opportunity. Be prepared for scrutiny, Michelle nodded. He's got connections in Washington. I saw him chatting with a senator this morning. Emma chewed on the inside of her cheek. I'll keep everything transparent. If our technology truly is superior, it should speak for itself. They worked through the afternoon, refining presentations and ensuring no data point was left ambiguous. By the time they left the conference room, Emma's eyes felt strained, but her resolve was unwavering. That evening, Emma skipped the networking cocktail hour and returned to her hotel room. She spread out her notes on the desk, reviewing them one last time. Despite the mental exhaustion, she recognized a growing conviction. She was exactly where she needed to be, pushing the boundaries of environmental tech in an arena filled with heavyweights. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. A text from Marcus. How about a quick bite downstairs, just to debrief on the day? Nothing formal, Emma replied with a smile. Meet you there in 15. Although exhaustion tugged at her, she felt a flicker of excitement at the idea of seeing him again. Stepping into the elevator, she reminded herself that Harriet's words still stood. Be cautious, be mindful. The corporate stage they were dancing on was as large as it was precarious. Yet with each new challenge, Emma found her footing just a little bit more certain, her determination a little stronger. Emma found a seat at a round table in the corner of the hotel's lounge, where Marcus was waiting. Muted jazz music flowed through the speakers. The lighting was low, giving the space a cozy, almost intimate feel, despite the constant traffic of conference attendees moving in and out. He greeted her with a tired grin. Long day, huh? She nodded, setting her folders on the seat beside her. Every day here feels like 3 days packed into one, but the momentum is good. I think we have a shot at convincing those government reps. Marcus motioned to a server, who took their orders. Emma inhaled the aroma of grilled food coming from the open kitchen area, realizing she hadn't eaten much since breakfast. So, how are you holding up? She asked. Any new developments on the Carter Tech front? He leaned back, letting out a low chuckle. Besides potential all-night data sessions, my team's been working on a parallel project, but a few mechanical snags have come up. Luckily, we have Jamal from R&D, who's a whiz at problem-solving. He and Linda have been a huge help. Emma remembered meeting Jamal and Linda during her brief visits to Carter Tech. They're good people, she said. It's nice to see how seamlessly our teams are collaborating. Marcus nodded. True, and we both have Harriet on our side, which is no small asset. I sense she's the kind of person who quietly shapes entire strategies behind the scenes. Emma smiled. She's definitely a mentor figure to me. As they talked, Emma realized that a sturdy network of allies was forming around her. Harriet, Michelle, Dr. Samuel, and now some of Carter Tech's top talents. It seemed like each one brought a unique strength to the table. Considering Victor's looming interference, that unity offered Emma a measure of reassurance. Their food arrived, a simple meal of grilled salmon for Emma and a chicken entree for Marcus. The conversation turned away from corporate strategy, drifting into personal stories. She learned that Marcus had once toyed with the idea of becoming a teacher, fascinated by the idea of guiding students to embrace technology as a tool for global improvement. Emma laughed, picturing him wrangling a group of rowdy high school kids. It was hard to reconcile that image with his composed CEO persona. A part of her found solace in these glimpses of normality. Despite the swirling corporate intrigues, they could still share simple human moments, dinners, casual jokes, and confessions of youthful dreams. She enjoyed watching his face light up when he described reading science fiction novels that shaped his ideas about sustainable tech. Their moment of camaraderie was cut short when Emma's phone vibrated insistently. She glanced at the screen, a text from Michelle reading, "We have a problem. One of the datasets is missing from the shared drive. Might be a glitch. Meeting Harriet in the lobby. Join us ASAP." She set down her fork. "I have to go. There's some kind of issue with our datasets." Marcus nodded, already standing. "I'll come with you." They found Michelle and Harriet near the lobby's front desk. Both women wore tense expressions. Michelle held up her phone. "The entire file containing our field trial logs from last year's Arizona tests is gone. It's like someone deleted or moved it. We can't find it in any backup folder." Emma felt a flush of alarm. Those were critical documents, ones they planned to present the next day to prove the device's longevity in high-temperature conditions. "Are you sure it's not just misfiled?" "I tried searching all subdirectories. Nothing," Michelle replied. Harriet exhaled, crossing her arms. "This might be sabotage. We both know someone who would benefit from discrediting us." Emma's mind went straight to Victor. She recalled Harriet's warning about him gathering intelligence. If he has connections inside any of our shared servers, he might have found a way to remove or hide that data, she reasoned. "We need to see if Carter-Tech's IT team can recover it. Their system might have more robust backups." Marcus's eyes narrowed in determination. "Let's go. My team is still awake, working on that mechanical snag I mentioned. I'll have them look into this right away." They hustled to Carter-Tech's makeshift conference room on the hotel's third floor, where Jamal and Linda were hunched over laptops, poring over lines of code. Marcus swiftly explained the situation, and Jamal got to work, typing furiously. Linda scanned her own system logs, searching for anomalies. Meanwhile, Emma paced the room. Her sense of unease grew with every passing minute. If they couldn't retrieve the data, they'd have a major gap in their presentation, one that could cast doubt on the entire project's reliability. She paused to glance at Harriet, who gave her a silent nod of reassurance. Michelle tapped her phone anxiously, waiting for any sign of progress. Eventually, Jamal spun around. "I found a partial backup," he announced. "It's incomplete, but we can restore most of the data." "It'll take a few hours to piece it together." A collective exhale rippled through the group. Emma felt relief surge in her chest. "That's a start," she said, exchanging a glance with Marcus. Though the situation was far from resolved, they stood together. Emma, Michelle, Harriet, Marcus, Jamal, and Linda, each leveraging their expertise to shore up vulnerabilities. As exhaustion threatened to pull them under, Emma realized more than ever that in this high-stakes environment, trust in her allies was paramount. By the time the sun rose on the third day of the conference, Jamal and Linda had managed to restore a substantial portion of the missing data. Emma and Michelle spent the early hours cross-checking everything for consistency. Though not every file was pristine, they had enough evidence to present a solid case to the government reps that afternoon. Emma skipped breakfast to finalize the slides, relying on a cup of strong coffee to keep her alert. Once satisfied, she grabbed her tablet and hustled over to the private meeting room Harriet had secured. Inside, she found Marcus talking in hushed tones with two officials from a federal environmental agency. Victor Milhouse stood on the other side of the table, arms folded, as if he'd been invited to the discussion or had simply inserted himself. Emma's pulse quickened at Victor's presence. She approached the group, forcing a composed smile. "Good morning," she said, nodding to the officials, then giving Victor a polite acknowledgement. Harriet offered her a seat at the large rectangular table. One of the officials, a distinguished-looking woman in her 50s, motioned for Emma to begin. "We've heard Carter-Tech has new data to share on the filtration project," she said. Mr. Milhouse here mentioned some potential gaps, but we want to make sure we understand both sides. Emma glanced at Victor, sensing the faintest curl to his lips. Smug confidence, perhaps. Clearing her throat, she projected her voice with practiced calm. Absolutely. Allow me to walk you through our field test results, including the updates we retrieved this morning. She opened her tablet and displayed a series of charts and photos on a wall monitor. The data showcased performance in both hot, arid conditions and more temperate climates, proving the device's versatility. Point by point, Emma highlighted how the unit maintained efficiency without ballooning maintenance costs. Every so often, Marcus added a note about Carter-Tech's capacity to handle large-scale production, reinforcing Emma's claims. Victor listened with studied indifference, occasionally checking his phone. When she finished, he cleared his throat. Impressive. However, I can't help but notice some mention of incomplete datasets in the logs. Could it be that these tests weren't as thorough as claimed? Emma felt the tension in the room spike. She kept her voice steady. The core data is all intact and verified. The minimal losses we experienced were primarily related to earlier prototypes that have since been improved. What matters is how the current model performs, and that's clearly documented. He arched an eyebrow. Yes, but documentation can be selective. I have a summary of my own firm's tests here, showing superior metrics in certain conditions. Maybe the government should consider awarding multiple grants and see which device truly holds up in the field. The officials exchanged looks, and the male representative, a tall man with wire-rimmed glasses, stepped in. We appreciate healthy competition, Mr. Milhouse, but let's focus on the device at hand. It sounds like Carter-Tech Green Growth's filtration unit is a strong contender for a nationwide rollout. Despite the official's conciliatory tone, Emma could feel Victor's frustration. He seemed eager to unearth any vulnerability in her presentation. The discussion continued for another 30 minutes, touching on funding logistics, regulatory approvals, and environmental certifications. When it concluded, the agency representatives left with a promise to review the data thoroughly and follow up. The moment they exited, Victor turned on Emma with a chilly stare. You're lucky they're giving you the benefit of the doubt, but rest assured, I'll be keeping a close eye on your methods. Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying a restrained edge. We've nothing to hide, Milhouse. Perhaps you should focus on making sure your own device meets the same standard. Victor grinned without humor. I'll make sure to remember that advice. Without another word, he strode out of the room, leaving a trail of tension behind him. Harriet quietly gathered her notes, casting Emma a glance. We handled that as best we could, she murmured. Emma let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. I agree, but this isn't over. He's not going to let it go. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. We'll make sure everything is airtight. Don't lose focus. By lunchtime, Emma headed to a small cafe in the convention center's lobby, needing a moment of calm. She ordered a sandwich and sat alone at a corner table. She allowed herself a minute of self-reflection, acknowledging how drastically her world had shifted. Once she'd felt content tinkering away in her lab, dreaming of technologies that might make a difference. Now she was navigating a high-stakes environment where corporate rivalries and federal funding decisions could make or break her work. Still, she refused to back down. Finishing her sandwich, she returned to the booth area, meeting Harriet, Michelle, and the Carter-Tech team. Marcus was there too, conferring with Jamal and Linda about next steps. Emma squared her shoulders, feeling a surge of determination. If Victor Milhouse expected her to fold under pressure, he'd soon learn just how dedicated she was to seeing this project through. The competition had begun in earnest, and Emma was ready to fight for every inch of ground. Emma woke before dawn in her Boston hotel room with a queasy feeling that had grown more insistent over the past few days. She chalked it up to stress and too many late-night brainstorming sessions. After all, the conference had been intense, and Victor Millhouse's constant attempts to undermine her work kept her on edge. She pressed a hand to her abdomen, telling herself it would pass once she was back in Chicago and off this chaotic schedule. Once she managed to steady herself, she rushed to pack. It was the final day of the conference. Most of the major presentations were over, but she still had a few meetings with potential investors who'd expressed interest. Then, in the evening, she and the rest of the Green Growth team would fly home. At least, that was the plan. Emma tidied her notes and headed downstairs to meet Michelle for a quick breakfast in the hotel lobby. Michelle was already there, sipping tea. "Morning," she greeted, eyeing Emma's pale complexion. "You look like you barely slept." Emma forced a small smile and took a seat. "I've been feeling off, probably just all the coffee and conference food." "Are you sure that's all it is?" Michelle asked gently. "You've been complaining of fatigue and headaches all week." Before Emma could respond, Harriet Dawson appeared, looking refreshed for someone who'd been managing the logistical puzzle of coordinating with government officials. Harriet set her purse down and joined them. "We have a call with Dr. Samuel in half an hour," Harriet said, not missing a beat. "He's waiting on data to finalize the next stage of prototype production." Emma tried to focus on Harriet's words, but a sudden wave of nausea gripped her. She reached for her orange juice, hoping no one noticed the tremor in her hand. She managed to take a few sips, forcing down the queasiness. "Everything okay?" Harriet asked with a faint frown. "Fine, I'll be fine," Emma replied quickly. "Let's get this day started." They headed over to the conference venue one last time. The expo floor was quieter now, with many booths already half dismantled. Emma touched base with Marcus at the Carter Tech booth, where staff were busy packing electronics into crates. He gave her a warm smile, though worry flickered behind his eyes. "You sure you're all right? You look a bit pale." She waved off his concern, not wanting to appear fragile. "Just need some fresh air." Marcus nodded, then pulled her aside. "I have good news. The federal agency is leaning favorably toward our proposal. They want to schedule a follow-up in Chicago next week." "That's great," Emma said, a surge of relief cutting through her discomfort. "All our scrambling with the data was worth it." "It definitely was," he replied, then added in a lower tone, "We make a pretty good team." Before Emma could reply, Harriet gestured for her to join a group of interested investors, and the moment was lost. She spent the rest of the morning immersed in conversations about projected timelines, cost analyses, and the environmental benefits of her filtration unit. Despite the occasional wave of nausea, she managed to maintain her composure. By mid-afternoon, the conference officially wound down. Emma said her goodbyes to various contacts, exchanging business cards and future meeting invites. She, Harriet, and Michelle took a ride-share back to the hotel to gather luggage. Marcus had left earlier to meet with his own team. Once at the hotel, Emma finally allowed herself a moment of solitude in the lobby restroom, splashing water on her face. Her reflection looked tired, dark smudges under her eyes, her usually bright complexion now wan. She inhaled and tried to quell the nagging thought that this wasn't just stress. A quiet voice in the back of her mind reminded her that she'd been too busy lately to notice if anything else was amiss in her personal routine. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place with unsettling clarity. She closed her eyes, counting the weeks since her last period. Her heart pounded as the realization washed over her. Could she really be pregnant? Emma let out a shaky breath. No. She decided it was too soon to panic. Maybe she was just late. Stress could do that, right? Her mind darted to that unforgettable night with Marcus in Chicago, the one she'd tried not to overanalyze. They'd both been cautious, hadn't they? The uncertainty made her legs feel wobbly, and she had to brace herself against the sink. When she stepped out, Harriet was waiting in the lobby with their luggage. "Ready to head to the airport?" Emma swallowed hard, forcing a nod. "Absolutely. Let's go home." She followed Harriet and Michelle into the waiting car. The entire drive to Logan International Airport was a blur. Emma tried to appear engaged in the small talk about conference highlights, but her thoughts were stuck on the possibility she refused to name out loud. For now, she resolved to keep her suspicions to herself. She would confirm it, one way or another, once she was back in Chicago. Until then, she'd cling to the notion that maybe it really was just exhaustion. 2 days after returning to Chicago, Emma found herself in the small bathroom of a drugstore, holding a pregnancy test with trembling fingers. Outside, the bustle of the city went on as usual, commuters heading to work, a street musician playing saxophone, cars honking in the traffic. But inside that cramped stall, the world felt like it had shrunk to the size of a single question. She closed her eyes as she waited for the test result. Her heart hammered, each second stretching unbearably. At last, she opened them. The result stared back at her. Unmistakable. Positive. A wave of conflicting emotions hit her like a physical force. Fear, disbelief, a strange hint of excitement, and then anxiety. She stuffed the test into her purse and quietly slipped out of the drugstore. As she walked back to her apartment, her mind raced. The truth was out. She was pregnant with Marcus Carter's child, a man she'd been cautious about dating, let alone building a family with. The timing was terrible. The biggest deal of her career was underway, and rumor had it that certain investors didn't like surprises that complicated the image of a focused, unwavering project leader. Once inside her apartment, she dropped onto her couch, unable to hold back tears. So many questions swirled in her head. Should she tell Marcus right away? Should she keep it secret for as long as possible? The rational part of her brain argued that transparency was the only fair route. But fear paralyzed her. What if this jeopardized everything they'd worked for, not to mention how it would look to colleagues, clients, and the press? She wiped her eyes and stood, determined to think through her options. Work. She needed to focus on work, if only as a temporary distraction. Logging onto her laptop, she checked for updates from Dr. Samuel Williams. Sure enough, a slew of emails awaited her regarding test results and prototypes. For the next few hours, she tried to bury herself in numbers and designs, hoping the swirl of technical details would drown out the anxieties gripping her mind. But each time she paused, the realization flared anew. She was going to be a mother, something she'd never even considered. Turning in her chair, she gazed at the city skyline visible from her living room window. The future felt precarious, as though one gust of wind could topple all her carefully arranged plans. Later, Michelle texted, "Need to see you. Big news about the project. Free for lunch." Emma almost declined, but she realized she could use the moral support. She met Michelle at a small cafe near Greengrowth's building. After exchanging pleasantries, Michelle leaned forward, her tone excited. "Some of the potential investors from the Boston conference are coming to Chicago earlier than we expected. They want an on-site visit of our lab. Harriet thinks we can finalize the initial funding round in just a few weeks." That's fantastic," Emma managed, forcing a smile. Michelle narrowed her eyes. "Are you all right? You look worried." Emma fiddled with her napkin. A part of her screamed to confide in her friend, to unburden the shocking news, but another part held back. "I'm fine, just a bit overwhelmed. It's been non-stop since Boston." Her friend's expression softened. "Yeah, it's been intense. But hey, you're the strongest person I know. If something's bothering you, you can tell me." Emma swallowed hard. She came close to blurting it out, but hesitated. "I will. Soon. I promise." The rest of the lunch was filled with project talk, logistics, timelines, even the possibility of a media spotlight. Emma left feeling both bolstered by the news of progress and weighed down by her secret. Back at her apartment, she decided she needed more information. She scheduled an appointment with her doctor for the next day, hoping to at least confirm how far along she was. She'd barely finished making the arrangements when Harriet called. "Emma, can you come by the office tonight? Marcus is here, and we need to finalize some details for the next investor pitch." Emma's breath caught at the mention of Marcus. Avoiding him was not a sustainable strategy, but she hadn't yet figured out how to approach this massive revelation. Still, she knew her role at Greengrowth demanded she show up for these discussions. "Of course," she replied, her voice steady even though her nerves weren't. "I'll be there in about 20 minutes. Ending the call, Emma grabbed her keys, her heart racing again. She stared at her reflection in the hallway mirror. 1,000 scenarios flickered through her head, Marcus's possible reactions, the potential fallout, the unstoppable changes that were sure to follow. Yet she kept moving, reminding herself that she'd always been the kind of person who faced challenges head-on, no matter how daunting. Emma arrived at Greengrowth's sleek, modern office to find the halls unusually quiet, the daytime buzz replaced by a late-evening hush. A few colleagues were still huddled at their desks, trying to wrap up projects. Harriet met Emma near the reception area, wearing her characteristic composed look. "Marcus is in the conference room," Harriet said, motioning down the hall. "We're reviewing the final budget breakdown before tomorrow's briefing. You okay to jump right in?" Emma nodded, forcing what she hoped was a confident expression. "Absolutely." They entered the conference room, where Marcus stood at a large interactive screen. He glanced up, his face lighting briefly at the sight of Emma, though she noticed a flash of concern in his eyes. Harriet took a seat, and Emma sat across from Marcus, opening her laptop and skimming through the documents he'd emailed. "We've estimated the new costs for ramping up production earlier than scheduled," Marcus explained. "If we want to secure these investors, we have to show we can deliver units by the end of the next quarter." Emma swallowed her trepidation. "That's a tight timeline, but we can manage if everything in the supply chain aligns. We'll need extra hands in manufacturing, though. Maybe outsourcing a portion of the assembly." Harriet nodded thoughtfully. "That's the direction we're leaning, and it might mean more frequent quality checks to maintain our standards." Marcus tapped the screen, revealing a proposed timeline. "If anyone can pull this off, it's us. I'm confident your design is up to it," he said, directing the comment at Emma. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and her stomach twisted at the hidden weight behind his words. Admiration, curiosity, perhaps a hint of worry. They worked another hour, hammering out details, until the blueprint for an accelerated schedule was somewhat solid. Harriet checked her watch and stood, yawning. "We've got enough for now. I'll finalize these points and email them tonight. You two finish up here. Emma, I'll see you tomorrow morning." Emma managed a nod, trying not to appear rattled by the thought of being alone with Marcus. Harriet left, the door clicking softly behind her. Emma's laptop screen glowed in the dimly lit room. Marcus cleared his throat. "You seem a bit distracted lately," he observed gently. "If something's bothering you, I hope you know you can talk to me." The concern in his voice only heightened her anxiety. She looked down, tapping a pen against her notepad. "I'm just tired. The conference was intense, and now we're diving right into investor meetings." He circled around the table, coming closer. "I get it. These last few weeks have been a whirlwind, but is that all?" Emma's pulse hammered. For a moment, she considered telling him about the pregnancy, her voice caught in her throat, though, as the enormity of it all overwhelmed her, This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about the future of her career, his reputation, the well-being of an unborn child, and the massive project that could reshape the green tech industry. She began, then forced herself to swallow the words. It's just a lot, but I'm handling it. He looked at her for a long moment, seeming to weigh whether to push further. Finally, he sighed. All right, just remember, you're not alone. We have a team for a reason. Relief and guilt flooded her simultaneously. She nodded, quickly gathering her papers. I should head home. Need some rest before tomorrow. Outside, the Chicago night was cool, a breeze rustling the trees that lined the street. Emma's footsteps echoed on the sidewalk as she tried to organize her tangled thoughts. She couldn't keep dodging the issue. Each day that passed made her feel like she was betraying Marcus by withholding the truth, but she also couldn't ignore the potential backlash. The next morning, Emma woke early, still groggy from a restless night. Her phone buzzed with notifications, messages about data updates, a reminder for a marketing call, a text from Michelle about the upcoming investor visit, and a note from Harriet urging Emma to arrive at the office early to prep for an upcoming press interview. Emma barely managed to nibble on toast before rushing out. At the office, she dove headfirst into tasks, finalizing a press release about the project's environmental impact, polishing a slide deck for tomorrow's pitch, and reviewing minor design tweaks with Dr. Samuel. By noon, she felt her energy draining, but she pressed on, sipping water to quell her queasy stomach. In the middle of a budget review with the finance team, a wave of dizziness nearly made her topple off her chair. She steadied herself, breathing slowly, claiming she just needed a brief break. Concerned looks shot her way, but she managed to wave them off. Returning to her desk, Emma buried her face in her hands. She was on the brink of exhaustion, balancing a massive project, a complicated romantic entanglement, and a life-altering secret growing with each passing day. Yet she couldn't slow down, not when everything she'd worked for could unravel if she did. The following afternoon, Emma pushed through the doors of a neighborhood clinic, heart pounding as she approached the reception desk. She'd scheduled this doctor's appointment a few days earlier, but each passing minute had only heightened her anxiety. She gave her name to the receptionist, who smiled and instructed her to wait in a row of pale blue chairs. She kept glancing at the clock, aware of an investor conference call in less than an hour. This was supposed to be a quick check-in, a chance to confirm the pregnancy and gauge how far along she was. Yet as she flipped through a dog-eared magazine, she couldn't help feeling that she was standing at the threshold of a colossal change. When she was finally called, the nurse led her down a hallway into a small examination room. Her doctor, Dr. Susan Caldwell, had a reassuring presence, with salt and pepper hair and a calm demeanor that put Emma slightly at ease. After a round of vital signs and standard questions, Dr. Caldwell confirmed what the test had already told Emma. She was indeed pregnant. Emma felt a swirl of relief and apprehension. She clutched the edge of the exam table. I know it's early, but I have a demanding job, and I'm not sure how I'm going to manage everything. Dr. Caldwell patted her shoulder. Plenty of women face intense schedules. It's about balancing self-care with work. We'll do a few more tests, monitor your health closely, but the first step is deciding who, besides a medical professional, you can rely on for support. Emma just nodded, her mind flicking to Marcus, Harriet, Michelle, and the complicated dynamic she'd created by keeping quiet. After arranging a follow-up appointment, she stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun. The city noises felt distant as she made her way back to her car. One phone call after another poured in. Harriet checking on a design plan, Michelle confirming the investor call. Emma realized she needed to be on that call in 10 minutes. She ended up dialing in from the driver's seat, leaning her phone against the dashboard. Michelle's voice came through the speaker. "All right, I've got Harriet and Emma on the line. We're waiting for Marcus to join." Seconds later, Marcus's confident tone entered the call. "I'm here. So, shall we begin?" They discussed the project's milestones, timeline adjustments, and the best approach for presenting these updates to the investors. Emma forced herself to concentrate, but her thoughts kept drifting to the news she'd just received. She wondered if Marcus could sense her distraction. Near the end of the call, Harriet asked Emma to run through a final confirmation of the lab inspection schedules. She recited the details by rote, impressed with her ability to function on autopilot. When it was over, she ended the call, sinking back into her seat. Another wave of nausea struck, and she grimaced, closing her eyes. A soft knock on the driver's window startled her. She jumped, then realized Michelle was standing outside. Emma lowered the window. "Michelle, what are you doing here?" Michelle shook her head, worry etched on her features. "I was at a client lunch 2 blocks away. I spotted your car and noticed you looked upset. Figured I'd check in." Emma hesitated, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. She gestured for Michelle to get in. Once her friend was seated, Emma's composure cracked. She admitted the truth in halting words. She was pregnant, and it was Marcus's child. Michelle's face shifted from shock to a quiet empathy. "Oh, Em." She placed a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. "How long have you known?" "Just a few days, officially," Emma whispered. "It's so overwhelming. The partnership deal, the conservative investors, the media attention. I don't know how to tell Marcus, or if I even should right now." Michelle nodded, absorbing the confession. "The timing is definitely complicated, but you can't hide this forever. Marcus deserves to know." Emma slumped forward, resting her forehead on the steering wheel. "I'm terrified. What if it ruins everything? What if the investors see this as a liability, or if Marcus thinks I've been dishonest?" "Those are valid fears," Michelle said gently, "but bottling it up will only make it worse. If there's trust between you two, it can handle this truth. If not, well, it's better to find that out sooner." Emma sniffed, lifting her head. "I know you're right. I'm not ready for the fallout. But I can't keep lying to everyone. You don't have to face this alone," Michelle said softly. "Let me help in any way I can. So will Harriet, I'm sure. And you might be surprised at Marcus's reaction. He seems genuinely invested in you as a person, not just as a partner in this tech project." Emma managed a shaky smile, grateful for the unexpected lifeline Michelle offered. Even though her anxiety still churned, she felt a small spark of courage lighting within her. She would need that spark to face the days ahead. Over the next week, Emma threw herself into work with a level of focus that bordered on obsession. Every morning, she arrived at Greengrowth before sunrise, reviewing prototypes and verifying updated data with Dr. Samuel. By midday, she was hopping between strategy meetings and phone calls with Carter Tech's board. In the evenings, she stayed late, refining presentations and quietly slipping out when only a few night shift techs remained. But the stress was taking a toll. Her fatigue worsened, and waves of nausea came more frequently, forcing her to hide in restrooms or sneak out for fresh air. If anyone at the office wondered about her condition, they kept their concerns to themselves. Harriet, ever perceptive, caught Emma leaning against a wall one afternoon, eyes closed. "You're running yourself ragged," Harriet murmured. "Is there something going on that I should know about?" Emma swallowed, her throat dry. She cared for Harriet's guidance, but the idea of revealing her pregnancy still felt too big. "I'm just stressed," she managed. "I promise I'm handling it." Harriet didn't press further, but the concern in her eyes spoke volumes. Later that evening, Emma sat alone in her office, the building mostly deserted. She opened an email draft she'd been staring at for days, a message to Marcus explaining the pregnancy. She typed, deleted, retyped, closed the draft. The next attempt, she considered requesting a private meeting to tell him face to face. Her heart pounded, thinking of his potential reactions. Would he feel blindsided, betrayed that she'd waited this long? Her phone chimed with a text from Michelle. "How are you holding up? I'm here if you need me." Emma let out a shaky sigh, touched by her friend's support. Before she could reply, another message popped up, this time from Harriet. "Don't forget we have an early investor session tomorrow. Please try to get some rest." She closed her eyes, massaging her temples. The competing pressures felt inescapable. Yet Michelle's words rang in her mind. You can't hide this forever. Summoning her nerve, she picked up her phone, scrolled through her contacts, and clicked on Marcus's name. It rang several times before he answered. "Emma, everything all right?" he asked, sounding surprised. Her mouth went dry. She nearly hung up, but forced herself to speak. "Marcus, hi. Sorry for calling so late. I wanted to see if you could meet me tomorrow after the investor session. There's something important I need to talk to you about." He paused, as though reading the hesitation in her voice. "Of course. Is this about the project, or it's personal?" she said softly, her pulse hammering. "Understood. Let's meet in my office at Carter Tech around 5. I'll clear my schedule." She thanked him, ending the call before her courage faltered. The reality of what she'd just done sank in. She was finally going to tell him about the pregnancy. Her stomach lurched with a mix of relief and dread. The next morning felt like a marathon. The investor meeting was a high-stakes affair. Emma stood alongside Harriet, Michelle, and a few Carter Tech representatives to showcase the latest prototypes. The investors, an eclectic mix of old-guard financiers and younger, eco-conscious venture capitalists, asked rigorous questions about cost projections, market feasibility, and long-term sustainability. Emma responded with practiced precision, thankful she'd memorized every data point. Marcus, who led parts of the presentation, regularly shot Emma supportive glances, as if to remind her they were a team. She appreciated it, even though it made her feel guiltier for withholding the truth. The meeting concluded with nods of approval from the investors, followed by an agreement to move forward on final contract negotiations. By 5 o'clock, Emma was on the 37th floor of Carter Tech's headquarters, standing outside Marcus's office. The corridor was hushed, with plush carpeting that muffled footsteps. She smoothed her blouse, took a breath, and knocked on the door. Marcus opened it personally, greeting her with a concerned half-smile. "Come in." He guided her to a pair of chairs by the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of downtown Chicago. He settled into one, motioning for her to sit in the other. "I've been wondering what's on your mind." Emma's heart thudded in her chest. She realized she was trembling slightly. "I appreciate you making time," she said, forcing a steady tone. "This isn't easy, but I need to tell you something." He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath. "Remember that night we spent together after I presented the prototype to your board? It was wonderful, but something happened that neither of us expected." Her throat felt tight, but she pushed on. "Marcus, I'm pregnant. I found out recently, and I wasn't sure how to tell you or if the timing would sabotage everything we've built so far. I'm sorry for not saying it sooner. She broke off, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Marcus's expression went through a cycle of shock, concern, and something else she couldn't immediately read. Her heart pounded as she braced herself for his response, uncertain whether it would be relief, anger, or a complicated blend of both. Emma's heart thundered in her ears as she watched Marcus absorb the news. They were in his Carter Tech office, late afternoon light glinting off the distant Chicago skyline. For a moment he said nothing, his stare fixed on the floor. She clutched the arms of her chair, waiting for a reaction, dreading every possible outcome. Finally, he lifted his gaze to meet hers. There was shock. Yes, but also a softness in his eyes she hadn't anticipated. "Pregnant," he repeated quietly. He pressed his lips together, trying to steady his breathing. God, Emma, I had no idea." Emma let out a trembling sigh of relief, although her nerves still buzzed. "I found out after we came back from Boston. I wanted to tell you right away, but—" She swallowed hard. So much was happening with the investors, and I got scared. It's not just about us, it's everything. Our companies, the public image, the project. I didn't want to sabotage your reputation or mine. Marcus sank into the chair across from her, hands clasped. "I understand the fear, but you shouldn't have carried that alone." He hesitated, inhaling sharply. "I'm not angry. Surprised, yes, and worried about the timing. But I'm not angry at you." A weight slid from Emma's shoulders, even as 100 new anxieties crowded in. "I haven't told anyone except Michelle. I'm terrified about what this means for the deal, for how our investors will react. Some of them are old school. Any sign of personal complications might make them question my commitment." Marcus nodded. "I've been in enough boardrooms to know that personal matters can get twisted, but let's not jump to worst-case scenarios." He reached out and gently took her hand. "First, let's make sure we're on the same page. This baby changes things, but it doesn't have to destroy all we've built." Emma's eyes stung with tears. She squeezed his hand back, a swirl of emotions stealing her voice. Despite her fear, she couldn't deny the surge of relief in having him here, taking her seriously, showing concern not just for the project, but for her and the unborn child. Her phone chimed, startling them both. She checked the screen and saw Harriet's name, followed by a quick text. "We need to talk ASAP. Bad news about the sabotage rumors." Emma's gut twisted. She turned the phone toward Marcus so he could see. He exhaled, eyes darkening with worry. "We'll handle it, I promise." They left his office together, stepping into the hallway where staff were beginning to head home for the day. Harriet was waiting near the elevator bank. She glanced at Emma, then Marcus, and her brow furrowed as if picking up on the intense undercurrent between them. I'm sorry to interrupt," Harriet said, speaking quickly. "We got word from an inside contact that Victor Millhouse is pushing a negative campaign among certain board members. He's claiming our technology is overhyped. He's also suggesting some instability in our leadership." Emma's pulse jumped. Had he already caught wind of her pregnancy, or was he simply attacking from every angle he could find? "What sort of instability?" Harriet's mouth set in a grim line. "No specifics. But if he's hinting that the leaders of this project are personally entangled or dealing with issues, you can imagine how the board might react. The rumor mill has already begun." Marcus exchanged a look with Emma, silently acknowledging the danger. "Let's regroup in the boardroom," he said, nodding at both women. Minutes later, they huddled around a sleek conference table, joined by Michelle and a few other trusted allies from Greengrowth and Carter Tech's teams. Harriet updated them on the sabotage attempts. Confidential memos circulated among high-ranking stakeholders, casting doubt on Emma's capacity to lead and insinuating that Carter Tech might be better off shelving the project. Michelle shook her head. "He's using every underhanded trick in the book. We need to counter this quickly." Marcus leaned forward. "I'll schedule a meeting with the Carter Tech board. We'll address these concerns head-on. If we let them fester, people will start believing Victor's propaganda." Emma swallowed, her hand drifting to her abdomen involuntarily. The gravity of it all settled on her like a heavy cloak. She cleared her throat. deciding not to mention her pregnancy in this full group. I'll call an emergency session at Greengrowth too. We need to present hard data to reaffirm the project's stability and my leadership. Their discussion continued, brainstorming strategies and potential allies who could vouch for Emma's dedication and skill. Each minute that passed felt like a puzzle piece snapped into place. Despite the looming crisis, a sense of unity bound them together. Eventually, Harriet glanced at the time. Let's finalize these action points tomorrow morning. It's late, and we're all spent. People began gathering their things. Emma found herself standing side by side with Marcus again, no longer certain how to act in front of others now that their secret was out, at least between them. Michelle offered Emma a supportive smile, as if to say, "You're not alone in this." Emma returned the gesture, a silent acknowledgement. Even if the world outside felt like a storm, they now had a plan. And beneath the layers of spreadsheets, investor calls, and corporate maneuvering, a new life was growing, one that might bring more hope than fear if they could just navigate this next wave of upheaval. Emma sat in her apartment at dawn, a laptop perched on her knees as she stared at the cityscape through the window. The sky shifted from charcoal to lavender, but her mind was fixed on the confrontation awaiting her at Greengrowth. She and Harriet planned to call an urgent town hall meeting with the senior staff to address the rumors swirling around. Marcus would handle a similar session at Carter Tech. Then they'd reconvene to present a united front. Her phone buzzed. Michelle's voicemail arrived. "Hey, you left so quickly last night. I just wanted to check on you. Let me know if you need anything." Emma rubbed her eyes. Even basic tasks felt monumental lately, given her constant fatigue and morning queasiness. Thinking of Michelle's unwavering support reminded her that she wasn't entirely alone. She typed a quick text back. "I'm all right, heading in soon. Thanks for everything." By 8 a.m., she was at Greengrowth's main conference room. Harriet was already there, meticulously arranging chairs and placing water bottles. The overhead lighting cast a bright, clinical glow on the space, matching the tense hush that usually accompanied emergency meetings. "Ready?" Harriet asked, giving Emma a meaningful look. Emma nodded, forcing steady breaths. "As I'll ever be." Senior staff trickled in, exchanging worried murmurs about outside interference and unverified gossip. Emma took a seat at the head of the table, Harriet to her right, Michelle to her left. Once everyone settled, Emma cleared her throat, projecting a confidence she didn't fully feel. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. As you've likely heard, there have been rumors questioning Greengrowth's ability to see our filtration project through. We want to set the record straight." She launched into a succinct overview, reiterating that the technology's fundamentals were sound, investor interest remained high, and the company was more united than ever. Harriet chimed in, referencing the thorough tests they'd conducted and the positive feedback from government agencies. At the end, Emma steeled herself. "Look, if you hear these rumors, address them immediately. Challenge them with facts. Transparency is our strength. Let's not let one competitor's scare tactics define our future." A ripple of applause, albeit subdued, spread around the room. Some department heads asked pointed questions. Did they suspect who was behind the sabotage? Were there any steps to protect intellectual property further? Emma answered as best she could, without openly naming Victor. Officially, they had no proof he was the mastermind, only a pattern of suspicious behavior. By the time the meeting ended, a sense of cautious optimism seemed to settle. People dispersed to their workstations, shoulders a bit less tense. Emma remained behind with Harriet and Michelle, slumping into a chair once the door closed. "I think that went well," Harriet said, massaging her temple. Michelle nodded. At least no one appeared panicked. But we all know how corporate environments can be. One whiff of doubt can grow into a wildfire if we're not careful. Emma exhaled slowly. Marcus is doing the same thing at Carter Tech. After that, we're going to reconvene. With luck, we can coordinate a solid statement to the press if this escalates." Harriet and Michelle exchanged a quick glance. Then Harriet said gently, "Emma, you've been working non-stop. Don't forget to take care of yourself." The urge to share her pregnancy with Harriet was strong, but Emma still hesitated, not wanting to complicate the morning's delicate balance. "I'll be fine," she said, standing. "I'll check in with you both in a couple hours." She made her way to her office. Sitting at her desk, she noticed a faint tremor in her hands. It could have been nerves, or the toll of early pregnancy, or a mixture of both. She rubbed at her eyes, thinking of how much simpler life had seemed just a few months ago. Yet, amid the chaos, she couldn't deny that part of her felt newly alive, aware of life's fragility and potential. She remembered Dr. Caldwell's advice: build a support system. So far, she only had Michelle and Marcus. Harriet might become part of that circle if Emma let her. Her father could be too. He'd always wanted grandchildren, though he might worry about the timing. For a brief moment, Emma wondered if she was keeping secrets for the sake of her career, or simply out of fear of judgment. The ping of a new email redirected her focus. It was a calendar invite from Marcus. Meeting at 2 p.m. to finalize press release statements. She accepted the request, heart pounding anew. She'd see him in just a few hours, time enough to gather her wits before stepping back into the swirling crossfire of corporate politics. As she stared at her computer screen, she allowed herself a single thought of quiet determination. She would face each challenge, one by one, until the storm abated. In that determination, she found a slender thread of hope, enough to keep her moving forward despite the mounting pressures inside and out. By mid-afternoon, Emma found herself standing in a sunny corner office at Carter Tech. Marcus had called for a smaller, private meeting, just him, Emma, Harriet, representing Greengrowth, and Jamal from the Carter Tech R&D team. The plan was to finalize a press statement that would highlight their unwavering commitment to the project, thereby countering any doubts sown by Victor Milhouse. While they waited for Harriet to arrive, Emma stole a glance at Marcus. His expression was focused, scanning through a draft press release on his phone. She couldn't help but recall the quiet intensity of their conversation when she revealed her pregnancy. Despite the tension swirling around them, he hadn't retreated or treated her any differently since that moment. If anything, he seemed more protective, meeting her gaze during team discussions with an almost imperceptible nod of reassurance. Jamal cleared his throat, drawing Emma's attention. "We have everything locked down on the R&D side," he said. "Linda's double-checking manufacturing specs. Our only real problem is the rumor that we can't scale up fast enough. If the public or the board believes that, it'll undermine investor confidence." Marcus turned to Emma. "Which is why we need your voice in this statement. You're the project's creator. People trust your expertise. If you communicate the viability, it'll help quiet the noise." Emma bit her lip, the weight of responsibility pressing on her. "I'll do it," she said softly, "but I want to emphasize more than just data. I want to mention the ethical and environmental stakes, why this project matters beyond quarterly returns." Marcus gave her a small, approving smile. "Exactly." Just then, Harriet entered. "Sorry I'm late," she murmured, shutting the door. "I had to handle a quick call from an investor who heard more whispers about leadership instability." Emma's stomach tightened at the phrase. She exchanged a look with Marcus, who gave her a solemn nod. Harriet sank into a chair, scanning the draft statement. "We need to be bulletproof. Let's include the timelines, mention the successful trial in Boston, and highlight the recent support from that federal agency." We'll also underscore the synergy between Green Growth and Carter Tech, how we're working seamlessly together. After half an hour of revising wording, Harriet and Jamal left to relay the final draft to the communications team. Alone, Emma and Marcus tidied the scattered notes on the desk. Marcus broke the silence first. "We should talk about us." Emma exhaled, hugging a stack of folders close to her chest. "I know, and I'm sorry it's been so hectic." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "I'm not pressuring you. I just want to know where we stand." He paused, gently touching her arm. "Maybe once we've handled this fiasco, we can find a quieter moment and figure out our next steps." "I want to support you, Emma. That includes the baby." She felt emotion welling up. The corporate persona she usually wore began to crack, replaced by the vulnerable truth of their situation. "I appreciate that more than I can say. It's all new territory for me. I've never even pictured myself as a mother, at least not like this." His eyes flickered with empathy. "I haven't exactly pictured myself as a father either, but I'm not running away. We'll navigate it, one day at a time." Their shared look held for a moment, an unspoken agreement to move forward as partners in more than just business. Emma felt a spark of reassurance. No matter how complicated the circumstances, she wasn't alone. Stepping out of the office, they found Harriet in the hallway. She raised an eyebrow, as if curious about the shift in their expressions. Before Harriet could ask, Marcus pointed to the nearest conference room. "Shall we finalize the distribution of the press statement?" They spent another hour coordinating with the communications teams, ensuring every line of the statement was both accurate and compelling. Once done, Harriet handed Emma a printed copy. "All right, this goes out first thing tomorrow. We'll keep an eye on media responses and investor reactions." Emma slipped the document into her folder. "Thank you, Harriet. We can't let these rumors overshadow our actual progress." Harriet gave her a thoughtful look. "I've seen a lot of corporate battles, Emma, but this one feels especially personal. We need to stand firm. And on a personal note, if you ever need anything—" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I hope you know I'm here." Something in Harriet's tone told Emma she might suspect more than she let on. Emma offered a small, grateful smile. "I do know. Thank you." Later, Emma rode the elevator down with Marcus, each immersed in their own thoughts. She exited on the ground floor, turning back for a moment. Marcus gave her a faint, encouraging nod, just as the elevator doors closed. Despite the swirling crises, Emma felt a strange sense of hopefulness. She might not be the same person she was even a month ago, but maybe that was exactly what she needed. She was stepping into a new identity, a leader, an innovator, and soon to be a mother. In that realization, she found a quiet strength that she hoped would be enough to carry her through the trials ahead. Emma's phone vibrated constantly over the next few days, filled with calls and messages from reporters, investors, and colleagues wanting reassurance that the project was still on track. The press statement had gone public, sparking a new wave of interest and speculation. Most of it was positive, praising Emma's dedication to environmental stewardship. However, a shadow of doubt remained, fueled by rumors of sabotage and unverified internal conflicts. She found a sense of calm in her lab, examining prototypes one last time with Dr. Samuel. The gentle hum of machinery and the faint odor of chemicals felt oddly comforting, reminding her of why she'd committed her life to this cause in the first place. "You've done remarkable work, Doctor," Samuel said, patting the top of a sleek metal filtration unit. "The design is more stable than any competing model I've seen. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Emma managed a genuine smile. "Thank you. Hearing that from you means a lot, especially right now." Exiting the lab, she nearly bumped into Harriet, who handed her a folder brimming with documents. "We have a final negotiating session with the Green Growth Board at noon. They want your personal assurance that you're ready to move into mass production." Emma nodded, scanning the top page. "I'll be there. Thanks for handling the setup." As Harriet walked off, Michelle approached, giving Emma a discreet thumbs up. "Just had a positive call with a major tech investor. They're impressed by your press statement and want to see if we'll consider going international sooner than planned." Emma's brows rose. "That's ambitious. Let's not overpromise. We need to solidify our domestic rollout first." Michelle grinned. "Caution is good, but their interest is real. I'll gather details and run them by you and Harriet." Emma's schedule was booked solid until the midday board meeting. She worked through each call and email systematically, ignoring the persistent fatigue tugging at her. When noon arrived, she steeled herself for the presentation. 2 hours of intense discussions with the Green Growth Board ensued. They asked detailed questions about timelines, risk assessments, and whether this entire endeavor could be jeopardized by competitor sabotage. Emma answered calmly, delivering both data and a heartfelt explanation of her vision. By the time she finished, some tension in the room seemed to ease. A board member with silver hair and a stern expression finally spoke. "We believe in this project, Ms. Harris. Your leadership has been commendable, but we can't ignore the fact there's talk about personal instability we need to ensure that won't interfere with our business goals." Emma swallowed, her mind flashing to her pregnancy. "I understand. I give you my word. I'm fully committed to ensuring the project's success, no matter what challenges arise." The board member nodded, and a slight wave of relief washed over Emma. The official close of the meeting resulted in a thumbs up to continue forward, though the promise felt laced with caution. She stepped out of the boardroom, only to be greeted by Marcus waiting in the corridor. "I thought I'd show some moral support," he said quietly. She gave him a grateful look. "Thanks. The board is in agreement to push forward. They're just worried about any personal fallout." Marcus's jaw tightened. "It's a balancing act, isn't it? Maintaining trust in professional circles while dealing with private matters. We'll make it work." They walked together to Emma's office, where Harriet and Michelle were already waiting. "We just got confirmation," Harriet said, waving her phone. "The Carter Tech Board is scheduling a final vote on the expanded production plan for next week. We all need to be present. This is it, the final step before rollout." Marcus nodded. "Once that vote passes, we can greenlight the manufacturing plants, but it's also the point where any last-minute sabotage could do real damage." Michelle tapped her watch. "On that note, I just got an email from Linda. She found an anomaly in our shared data repository. It's not the same kind of deletion we saw before, but something suspicious. She's not certain, but it looks like someone might be altering the testing logs." Emma felt her chest tighten. "We need to lock everything down. No more open access directories. Let's secure all sensitive data behind multiple encryptions, and only a small circle of us get the keys. Harriet, Marcus, me, and maybe Jamal or Dr. Samuel. That's it." Harriet gave a brisk nod. "Agreed. Let's implement it by day's end." As they broke off to handle their tasks, Marcus gently touched Emma's arm. "Be careful," he said, voice low. "Whoever's behind this won't stop until they've crippled our credibility." Emma exhaled, her gaze steady. "So we won't give them the chance." She spent the next several hours collaborating with IT specialists to bolster security measures. Harriet and Michelle double-checked every data file for signs of tampering, while Marcus coordinated with Carter Tech's legal team. The day blurred into evening, and Emma noticed only when her stomach growled that she'd missed dinner entirely. She felt another wave of dizziness creep over her, forcing her to sit down and sip water. In the hush of her office, She paused to reflect. Each step they took, from press releases to lockdown data, pushed them closer to the official launch. Yet each move also seemed to invite fresh attacks. Emma wondered how much longer she could keep pace, especially as her body signaled its own growing needs. Still, her resolve remained unbroken. They were poised on the brink of a final confrontation with their rivals, and with the internal challenges that threatened to unravel everything. The Carter-Tech board gathered in a towering glass-walled meeting room on the 45th floor of the company's headquarters. From this height, the city appeared miniature, streets, cars, and people all dwarfed by the corporate skyline. Emma stood at one end of a long, polished table, her reflection merging with the city lights in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Marcus stood beside her, with Harriet, Michelle, and several Carter-Tech board members seated nearby. They were there to cast the final vote on whether to proceed with full-scale production of Emma's filtration system. This was the moment everything had led up to. Years of research, months of negotiations, countless hurdles, yet the tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to rattle even the most seasoned executives. Victor Millhouse had somehow been granted observer status at this meeting, courtesy of a minority shareholder who'd invited him in as a consultant. Emma bristled when she saw him enter, a smug tilt to his chin. She exchanged a wary glance with Harriet, who subtly nodded, as if to say, "Be ready." Once formalities were out of the way, Emma was asked to present a summary of the unit's final specs and the projected outcomes for large-scale deployment. She spoke clearly, relying on data Harriet and Michelle had meticulously verified. Marcus chimed in to emphasize Carter-Tech's manufacturing capabilities. At certain moments, Victor let out a soft scoff, which Emma tried her best to ignore. When they finished, the lead board member rose to address the group. "We've seen the numbers, heard the arguments. The final vote will determine if Carter-Tech invests in immediate production or delays to reassess. Let's open the floor for any last discussions." Victor stood, smoothing his tie. "I've observed some irregularities in the data logs, strange entries, missing timestamps. I suspect that Miss Harris's technology might not be as stable in real-world conditions as she claims." Emma's blood ran cold. She resisted the urge to snap back, maintaining a calm facade. "Any irregularities could be due to the sabotage we've been warning about for weeks. Mr. Millhouse, our IT teams have been plugging security leaks created by unknown parties. The primary data sets remain solid." He turned his gaze to the board, ignoring Emma. "All I'm suggesting is a postponement. Let us conduct a thorough third-party audit before risking millions, even billions, on a system that may fail under pressure. Carter-Tech's reputation is at stake." Marcus's shoulders tensed. "We have verified results from multiple test sites. Pulling out now would mean the planet misses out on a truly groundbreaking technology, and Carter-Tech loses a market advantage. You all know the global demand for greener solutions is skyrocketing." A hush fell over the room as the board members exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, one of them, an older man with a serious expression, said, "We are indeed aware of the sabotage claims. However, we also value caution. If there's any truth to Mr. Millhouse's concerns, it could cost the company dearly." Harriet cleared her throat. "If I may speak, Green Growth stands behind every data point. We have robust endorsements from federal environmental agencies and private investors alike. Delaying now would compromise not only profits, but also our credibility with these stakeholders. They've placed trust in Carter-Tech and Green Growth to deliver." The tension mounted. Emma felt a flutter in her stomach, a mix of anxiety and the new reality of her pregnancy. She knew what was at stake. If the board sided with Victor, her life's work would stall or be lost. She also knew revealing her personal situation here could play right into Victor's narrative of instability. It was too risky. At last, a board member pressed a button on the table to initiate the electronic voting system. Names flashed on the large screen, each inputting a yes or no to greenlight immediate production. Emma clenched her fists at her sides, her heart pounding like a drum. One by one, votes appeared. Yes, yes, yes. A brief pause. No, another quick input. Yes, no, tallying up. The final count was 7 in favor, 2 opposed. A wave of relief surged through Emma. She swallowed a gasp, and Marcus exhaled, a spark of triumph in his eyes. The board member declared, "Motion passes. Cartertech will proceed with production in partnership with Green Growth." In the hush that followed, Victor's face twisted in frustration, though he quickly masked it with a tight smile. He gave a stiff nod to the board, offering formal congratulations in a tone dripping with insincerity. Then he left without another word. Emma suspected he would continue his efforts to undermine them, but for now they had prevailed at the highest level. Several board members rose to shake Emma's hand, praising her tenacity. Marcus leaned in close, murmuring, "You did it." Emma felt tears sting her eyes as the gravity of this success settled in. She thought of the child she carried, the challenge of balancing career and motherhood, and the promise she'd made to remain true to her calling. In this moment of victory, she found renewed strength. The greatest trials might still lie ahead, but at least now she could face them knowing her work was finally on the path to changing the world, one filtered breath at a time. Emma stepped out of Cartertech's skyscraper into the bright Chicago afternoon, the echoes of applause from the board meeting still reverberating in her mind. The air felt lighter somehow, as if she had emerged from a long tunnel and was now taking her first real breath. With the official vote secured, the path to mass production was clear, yet despite the celebratory mood, she sensed a lingering vulnerability. The stakes remained high, and Emma was acutely aware that even success brought its own pressures. At street level, Harriet caught up with her, shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. "We did it," she murmured, her voice edged with relief. "Now comes the follow-through." Emma nodded, pressing a hand instinctively to her abdomen. The subtle swell was still hidden beneath her tailored blouse, and no one but Marcus, Michelle, and Dr. Caldwell knew her secret. "Yes, we need to be meticulous," she agreed. "This is where our real work begins." They started walking, weaving through lunchtime crowds. Emma noticed a few passers-by glancing curiously at her, likely recognizing her from the recent press coverage. While she appreciated the positive attention, it made her uneasy to realize her private life might soon be under a more intense spotlight. She reminded herself that the environment, her life's work, was worth every inconvenience. When they reached the Green Growth building, Harriet hesitated at the revolving doors. "I've got a phone briefing with the marketing team. Are you coming up?" Emma's gaze shifted to a small park across the street. "I'll be there shortly. I need a moment to clear my head." Harriet nodded knowingly. "Take your time," she said, then disappeared inside. Left alone, Emma made her way to the park, finding an empty bench under a blooming magnolia tree. Soft petals blanketed the grass, and the sound of traffic melted into the background. She sank onto the seat, letting the calm wash over her. It struck her how different the world felt now, that her invention was on the brink of widespread implementation. Just months ago, her dream had been confined to labs and conference rooms. Now entire cities might soon benefit from cleaner air. She pulled out her phone, seeing a text from Michelle. "Any celebratory lunches planned?" "I'm free if you want to slip away later," Emma smiled, touched by her friend's unwavering support. She typed back a quick reply, "Maybe tomorrow. Need a breather today," then set the phone aside. Her mind wandered to her father, imagining how he might react once he learned about the pregnancy. They'd had a tense relationship at times, his old-fashioned outlook clashing with Emma's relentless career focus. Still, he'd always been proud of her achievements. She suspected he'd want to be part of this new chapter in her life, though she dreaded the inevitable lecture on the importance of settling down. A soft voice startled her. "Miss Harris." Emma looked up to see a woman in her 40s wearing a business casual outfit and an earnest expression. "Yes," Emma responded, standing out of politeness. "I just wanted to say congratulations on your latest success," the woman said, fiddling with the strap of her bag. "I've been following the news about the filtration technology. My brother has asthma, and the idea that our city might finally see real improvements in air quality, it means a lot." Emma felt a surge of warmth, a reminder of why she fought so hard. "Thank you," she replied quietly. "I hope we can make a genuine difference." The woman smiled, nodding before heading off. Emma sat back down, letting the moment of gratitude settle. These personal encounters made every late-night work session, every anxious heartbeat worthwhile. As she rose to return to her office, she noticed Marcus across the street, stepping out of a car. Their eyes met, and he offered a small wave, crossing over to join her. The midday sun reflected off his neatly pressed suit, and Emma felt her stomach flutter at the sight of him. No longer just a partner in business, but in something far deeper. "I was looking for you," he said softly when he reached her, keeping a respectful distance in case they were observed. "I saw Harriet, and she said you needed some air." She nodded. "I was just taking in the fact that everything's changed." Marcus scanned her face. "Are you all right?" Emma hesitated, then allowed herself a small, genuine smile. "I'm adjusting," she admitted. "Everything feels bigger now, in both good and daunting ways." They exchanged no further words. Instead, they turned together toward the entrance of Greengrowth. The prospect of new challenges weighed on them, but there was a shared understanding that they stood on the cusp of something transformative. Each step felt purposeful, as if they were crossing a threshold from one life into another. For Emma, it was more than a corporate victory. It was the beginning of a personal journey she was only just starting to comprehend. Emma was 6 weeks into her pregnancy when she arrived at Greengrowth one morning and found the reception area abuzz with excitement. Posters bragging about the Carter-Tech partnership lined the walls, and a new wave of interns hurried about with stacks of papers. The entire building hummed with possibility, reflecting the successful vote that had catapulted the filtration project into the mainstream spotlight. Michelle intercepted her by the elevators, sporting a grin. "I've lost count of how many phone calls I've fielded this morning. People are clamoring for interviews, partnerships, even philanthropic tie-ins. The schedule is insane." Emma pressed the elevator button, resisting a groan. She was thrilled to see the company thriving, but found it harder each day to summon boundless energy. "Let's space them out," she said, adjusting her shoulder bag. "We can't commit to too many events too soon." Michelle gave a quick nod. "By the way, Harriet wants you in the conference room at 10. The mayor's office wants to discuss a potential pilot program in some of the city's most polluted neighborhoods." They stepped into the elevator with a small group of employees, each of whom greeted Emma with respectful smiles. She responded in kind, hiding her surprise at how quickly she'd become a figurehead. The elevator ride was brief, but she felt the weight of eyes on her, the subtle awareness that her every move now carried more significance. When the doors slid open, Emma made her way to her office. Before she could even set down her coffee, an incoming call lit up her phone screen. Her father. She hesitated, heart pounding, then answered. "Hey, Dad." She could practically hear his proud grin through the phone. "Emma, sweetie, I saw you on the news last night," he said. "All this talk about your invention. It's remarkable. Are you holding up all right?" She leaned back in her chair. It's been a whirlwind, Dad. We're just trying to make sure the rollout goes smoothly. He hesitated. I know you're busy, but maybe we could talk in person soon. We could grab dinner or something. I'd like to hear more about it, about everything going on with you. Emma felt a surge of guilt. She'd been meaning to schedule a visit, especially with her pregnancy news weighing on her. But she couldn't quite bring herself to tackle that conversation yet. I'd love that, she managed, picking a date in her mind. How about next week? Things might be calmer by then. They set a tentative plan before hanging up. She exhaled, pressing a hand to her abdomen once more. Over the past few days, nausea had given way to a subtle awareness of the new life forming inside her. She often caught herself daydreaming about the future, yet the professional demands never let up long enough for reflection. At 10 sharp, she marched into the conference room. Harriet and a representative from the mayor's office were already seated, reviewing documents. Within minutes, Emma was laying out a proposal for installing the first batch of filtration units in designated neighborhoods. The conversation flowed with excitement, but also caution. Funding sources needed to be confirmed, and local politicians would demand evidence of tangible community benefits. The meeting stretched on for nearly 2 hours, but the potential for an official city pilot program left Emma feeling energized. As soon as she left the room, Michelle cornered her in the hallway, brandishing a folder. We have another meeting with the Philanthropic Foundation at noon. They might be interested in subsidizing units for low-income areas. Emma gave a quick thumbs up, her mind already racing with possibilities. Can you handle the initial briefing? I need 5 minutes to look over these new pilot program notes. Michelle's knowing expression softened. Of course. Don't push yourself too hard. Grateful, Emma ducked into her office and closed the door, relishing a moment of silence. She glanced at her watch. 15 minutes until the next wave of discussions. Her pulse felt rapid, and a light sheen of sweat covered her forehead. Rummaging through her desk drawer, she found a package of crackers that had become her secret weapon against sudden bouts of queasiness. She sank into her chair, munching slowly as she scanned through policy documents. The once familiar corporate jargon now held a personal significance. Her inventions were no longer mere technical feats, they were potential life changers for entire communities. In quieter moments, she marveled that she was also growing a child, forging an intimate future that had never factored into her old 5-year plans. A knock at the door startled her. Harriet stepped in, offering a faint smile. I just spoke to the mayor's rep. They're already drafting a memorandum of understanding for the pilot program. You'll likely be asked to speak at a public announcement soon. Emma swallowed her cracker, nodding. All right, I'll be ready. Harriet's gaze lingered on her face. You're taking on a lot. Don't forget to pace yourself. And if you ever need to talk, I'm here. Emma managed a small, appreciative smile. I know. Thank you. As Harriet left, Emma stood, preparing to head to the next meeting. She recognized she was stepping back into her world with a new perspective, one that blended corporate ambition, ethical responsibility, and deeply personal transformation. Although the pace was grueling, she felt a steady resolve that reminded her she was, for better or worse, exactly where she was meant to be. A crisp autumn wind swept across the outdoor courtyard where Emma was scheduled to give a short speech about the pilot program. Set against a backdrop of newly installed filtration units, local officials and community members gathered to hear how this technology might improve daily life in their neighborhood. A podium stood front and center, flanked by banners displaying both Greengrowth's and Cartertech's logos. Emma stood near the stage, bundling her jacket tighter against the chill. She noticed Harriet calmly chatting with a city council member, and Michelle coordinating final details with a volunteer crew. Marcus was also in attendance, although he kept a low profile, content to let Emma take the spotlight. A woman from the mayor's office introduced Emma, praising her innovation and tenacity. As Emma approached the microphone, she inhaled deeply, hoping her voice wouldn't betray the nerves swirling in her stomach. She began with a heartfelt acknowledgement of the community's concerns about air quality, then explained how the filtration units worked in simple, direct language. She highlighted the potential for tangible health benefits, mindful not to overpromise. Applause punctuated her conclusion, and Emma felt a surge of pride tinged with humility. Stepping away from the podium, she shook hands with local residents who approached, some sharing stories of loved ones suffering from asthma or other respiratory conditions. Each anecdote hammered home the reality of what her invention could accomplish, far beyond the walls of any laboratory. When the event concluded, Harriet guided Emma to a small refreshment table. "You did wonderfully," Harriet said, warmth in her voice. "A year ago, you were presenting to corporate boards, and now you're reaching out to actual families who'll benefit from your work." Emma nodded, eyes drifting across the courtyard. "I suppose I've learned the value of connecting with the real-world impact, not just chasing data points. Thank you for pushing me to get here." She paused, hesitant but grateful for Harriet's presence. "You've been more than a director, you know. You've been a mentor." Harriet simply squeezed Emma's hand in response, her eyes glimmering with pride. The moment felt symbolic. They'd reached a milestone, bridging the gap between high-level innovation and everyday practicality. Marcus approached, a half-smile curving his lips. "Impressive speech," he said quietly. "No jargon, just clear passion. That's how we'll win over the skeptics." Emma tried to keep her composure, aware of the watchful eyes around them. Even so, she couldn't hide the flicker of warmth that sparked whenever he was near. "I hope so," she replied. "It's a relief to talk about the benefits without disclaimers and disclaimers of disclaimers." He chuckled, then leaned closer, his voice barely audible. "Are you feeling all right?" "You've been pushing yourself non-stop." She nodded, lowering her gaze momentarily. "I'm okay, just a little tired." Their conversation was cut short by a reporter who stepped forward, camera in hand, asking for a quick interview. Marcus excused himself, leaving Emma to handle the media attention. She managed a polished, concise statement that reiterated her earlier remarks, keeping it hopeful yet grounded. Shortly thereafter, the crowd began to disperse. Emma rejoined Harriet and Michelle, who were chatting near a row of the filtration units. Michelle looked at Emma with both admiration and concern. "You've turned into quite the public speaker," she teased, then added, "I hope you can rest for a bit now that this event is done." Emma smirked. "I'll rest when I'm retired. In the meantime, these units need further monitoring to ensure they're performing as expected." Harriet exchanged a glance with Michelle. "We can coordinate that. You don't have to micromanage every step." Emma took a breath, acknowledging her friend's worries. "I'll delegate," she promised. "But you know me. I need to stay hands-on, at least a little." A light drizzle began, prompting the event organizers to pack up the remaining chairs and tables. Emma, Harriet, and Michelle took refuge under a makeshift canopy, joined briefly by a local teen who volunteered to help with the pilot project. He was brimming with questions about engineering and college paths. Emma found herself patiently describing potential courses, scholarships, and the excitement of tackling real-world problems. This unexpected mentorship made her realize just how far she'd come. She was no longer the starry-eyed engineer fighting for a seat at the table. Now, she had the chance to open doors for others. After the teen left, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. She glanced at Harriet, silently thanking her for the countless pep talks, and then at Michelle, recalling all the times she'd been the voice of reason. In the rain-soaked courtyard, next to newly installed technology that promised cleaner air, Emma sensed that her role was morphing into something bigger than she'd ever planned. Each day, she was shaping the future, not just for herself or her company, but for an entire community and the generations that might follow. Several weeks after the pilot program launch, Emma found herself in a familiar spot, her apartment's cozy living room, where she'd first entertained visions of changing the world through engineering. The difference now was the gentle hum of the city evening outside her window, layered with a calm that contrasted sharply with the frantic pace of the past months. She sank into her sofa, worn out from meetings, but feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Across from her sat her father, visiting for dinner at last. He was in his 60s, hair graying at the temples, with a thoughtful expression as he studied Emma's face. "I was thrilled to hear about everything you've accomplished," he said quietly, sipping the tea she'd made. "I always knew you had big dreams, but I never imagined they'd lead to something this impactful." Emma felt her chest tighten, not with anxiety, but with emotion. "You believed in me even when I pushed you away," she admitted. "I'm sorry if I made you feel I didn't value your support. I was just so focused on proving myself in a tough industry." Her father set his teacup down. "I understood your drive, even if I worried it might leave you lonely. Now I see you've built not only a groundbreaking career, but also strong bonds at work and beyond. I'm proud of you, Emma." Genuinely proud, she took a shaky breath, deciding it was time to share one more piece of her life with him. Her hand drifted to her slightly more pronounced belly. "Dad, there's something else. I'm pregnant." A flurry of emotions crossed his features. Shock, a flicker of concern, then an unmistakable glimmer of happiness. Why didn't you?" he stammered, then paused. "I understand. Your schedule's been insane." Emma leaned forward, speaking in a measured tone. "It happened unexpectedly, and I wasn't sure how to handle it at first. The father is someone I trust and care about deeply, but we're still navigating the public image side of things. I didn't want to overshadow the project or cause a stir among the investors." Her father reached across the coffee table, taking her hand. "Emma, you've always known your own mind. I'm sure you'll figure out the right balance. This child, it's a gift, no matter how it arrived." Tears pricked at Emma's eyes, but she blinked them away, nodding gratefully. The warmth in her father's voice eased a tension she hadn't fully acknowledged before. She rose, crossing the room to fetch a family photo album. They spent the next hour flipping through pictures, from Emma's childhood science fair projects to her early college days. Each photo told a story of determination and growth. When he finally left, giving her a tender hug goodbye, Emma felt as though a missing puzzle piece had snapped into place. She cleaned up the teacups and walked onto her small balcony, the city lights shimmering below. The crisp night air carried a faint echo of car horns and distant music, reminding her that this was the world she'd chosen, dynamic, challenging, and full of hope. Her phone buzzed softly. A text from Marcus lit the screen. "How did your talk with your dad go? All good?" She typed back. "Better than I imagined. He's happy for us." Within moments, Marcus replied, "I'm relieved, thinking of you." Emma rested her phone on the balcony railing, reflecting on how far they'd come. From a daring night in Chicago to months of corporate showdowns, they now stood on the brink of welcoming new life. She felt a quiet certainty in her choices, a realization that her career and personal life could coexist, even thrive, if she allowed herself the grace to embrace both. The next day at Greengrowth, Harriet greeted Emma with updates about the filtration units already showing positive data in the pilot neighborhoods. More city councils from other regions had reached out, eager to replicate the project. Emma was scheduled for another press briefing, this time alongside a Carter Tech executive who specialized in community outreach. Instead of dread, she felt anticipation. Sharing the progress with a broader audience meant magnifying the impact, proving that collaboration could drive real environmental change. Later that afternoon, she found a quiet moment in her office, glancing at an early prototype of her filtration device she'd kept as a keepsake. Its edges were rough, the paint scratched, but it stood as a reminder of how innovation starts small, shaped by trial and error. Emma's life, too, felt like a work in progress, molded by mistakes, triumphs, and the unexpected twists that no business plan could predict. She ran her palm over her abdomen, feeling a delicate flutter. In that moment, she realized that the sense of belonging she'd spent years chasing had finally settled into her bones. She was no longer just Emma Harris, the brilliant engineer, but Emma Harris, a multifaceted woman who could love, nurture, and break barriers all at once. No matter what challenges arose next, she carried within her a newfound resilience. The city outside hummed, the planet spun, and her invention quietly filtered the air in distant neighborhoods. And in her chest grew an unshakable belief that even in the high-powered corridors of corporate ambition, there was room for hope, family, and the gentle breath of a future yet to unfold. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.